Sword of Coming Chapter 11-12. A lying river meanders into the sea and flows endlessly. Thousands of spring mountains are painted on the screen, and strange peaks are easy to rise by the water. Chen Pingan informed Chao Gun that they could return to this fengshui cave mansion. The outside world is still happily speculating which two ascension cultivators are fighting. Since they were expelled from the country by the domineering old sword fairy among them, they are destined not to get a share of the pie, so they have to find some fun to relieve their boredom. Guessing that the person who did this sword cultivator in the Ascension realm is most likely from Lixiazu Qinggong Taibeijing Artemisia, Jing Old Fairy. While waiting for someone, Ning Yao asked, the Lu clan of the Yinyang family in Zhongtu helped deduce the good and bad omens of the mine. Chen Ping smiled and said, it's just made up. At that time, he did bring Xiaomo and Xiego to visit the Lu family, but that Lu is an old fox. How could he choose to harm himself at the critical moment when the ancestors of the three religions were about to leave their ways? Merit in moral deeds, make wedding clothes for others. As for whether Lu Shen is in harmony now, it's hard to say. Yin-yang and five elements are an extremely wide avenue, whether it is height or width, it is better than the way of writing and poetry. Zhou Zi talks about the sky, and Lu Shi talks about the earth. It's too strange. That time when Chen Ping returned to Haoran from outside the sky, his first choice of foothold was Sishiantai of the Lu family. The patriarch Lu Shen who walked out of the Jilan department really forbeared everywhere. My second place worships Xie dog, so live splashing didn't make Lu Shen really angry. More than 20 sword cultivators came together, and Chen Pingan briefly told them the inside story of Wang Jia being plotted by ministers and officials. Since he was standing with Ning Yao, Chen Pingan could speak freely, calling Zhou Mi by his first name. Chao Gun and the others spent about half a year in Chuanzhou Mountain, and this matter is considered to be over. Chen Ping clasped his fists together with the 7 outsiders, immortal sword cultivators, and thanked them with a smile, but the content of the words was very outrageous. Since we are all sword cultivators, then I won't say polite words to you other than sword cultivators. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. When we visit Aquarius Island in the future, we will have enough wine in Luoluo Mountain. An old sword cultivator in the nascent soul realm straightened his waist, his face flushed, but he couldn't help but be polite. Actually, I didn't do any serious work. I can't afford to be a hidden official. Thank you so much. Chen Ping smiled and said, you are doing a life-threatening job of actively tying your head to your belt, and you can't afford a few words of thank you from Chen Mao. If you say this on the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Senior, you are looking for wine. Xie Songhua, he said to Song Pin with a heartfelt voice, earlier, your fuyao was about to be unsheathed, but Chen Pingan pressed it casually with one hand. Fortunately, he is a decent person. Otherwise, with your appearance, you met a certain book in the wilderness. Landscape travel notes my hero, what do you do? Song Pin said calmly, teach him a few tricks in the house instead. Xie Songhua realized later, Ning Yao can't hear our voices, can he? Song Pin said, if you don't name her name, she probably won't be able to hear you. It's hard to tell now. Xie Songhua raised his eyebrows at Ning Yao, then raised his chin at Chen Pingan, you too. When? Don't want to learn the swordsmanship of Lord Yingguan. The primordial spirit of the Taoist couple on the mountain copulates with fish and water, which is no different from the way of bed between men and women down the mountain. Whether they understand it or not is a world of difference. Ning Yao had no choice but to pretend to turn a blind eye. Chen Ping asked them to sit in the house first, saying that he still had to wait for someone. A scholar with the appearance of a young man came, with the identity of a Confucian gentleman. A Confucian temple-style jade pendant hung on his waist, and the inscription was a famous saying of a sage, don't pretend to be long or short, exhaust yourself with love. If you are, you can be called a straight scholar. It should be an academy figure secretly dispatched by the Zhongta Confucian Temple to be fully responsible for the affairs of Quanjiaoshan. When Chen Pingan saw the inscription on the jade pendant, a smile appeared on his face. He must be a straight man, of a gentleman. If I am in charge of the Confucian Temple, at least let this person be in charge of a Confucian academy. The Confucian gentleman bowed and saluted. Luoyuan Academy is highly mysterious. I have met Mr. Chen. Chen Pingan smiled and saluted. Chen Pingan of Luopa Mountain, I have met the head of the mountain. Gao Xuandu, the great gentleman of Luoyuan Academy in Fuyazhou, and Wen Yu, the scholars of Tianmu Academy, were all young Confucian scholars who rose up in that war. Gao Xuandu just exchanged a word of greetings, and went straight to the point, asking Chen Pingan about the cause of Quanjiaoshan's vision. Chen Pingan took out 2 items from his sleeves and hung them in the air in front of him. They were 2 high-ranking relics left by Wang Jia, a golden crown and a scroll. Gao Xuandu asked suspiciously, "This is?" Chen Pingan said, "For example, the patriarch of Doqing, the Shujuan Wang Jia, was ambushed and killed by the barbarian sword cultivator and Yao Guanxiang in his early years. Wang Jia relied on an ancient secret method, struggling to survive, upholding a little bit of true spirit, and finally relying on the posture of ghosts and immortals, seeing the sun again, taking over the general affairs of Doqing, maintaining the incense of the ancestral hall, and now accumulating external skills to perfection. I beseech Song Pin and CS Song Hua to hand over the sword to help him solve the army and escape from the catastrophe." Gao Xuandu just glanced at Chen Pingan, then smiled and said, "Okay, I understand. I will immediately write 2 letters and report the truth to Luoyuan Academy and Zhongta Confucian Temple, and then I will go to Ruda City in person to talk with them, explain it." Really vigorous and resolute, not sloppy at all. Just being a deputy mountain chief is Chu Kai. Chen Pingan pushed the golden crown and scroll to Gao Xuandu. "Since we are on the way, I will trouble Master Gao Shan to hand them over to Ruda City Patriarch Hall." Gao Xuandu put the 2 items in his sleeves, hesitated for a moment, and invited with a smile, "Among the 72 academies, our Luoyuan Academy has always paid more attention to military strategy. Can you invite Mr. Chen to give a lecture? As for the subject of the project, Mr. Chen can to self-made." Chen Ping nodded with a smile and said, "If there is a chance, I will definitely go." Gao Xuandu said without hesitation, "I would like to ask, I wonder if Mr. Chen's opportunity is in the last few days or within half a year. If Mr. Chen has a lot of business recently, so he can't get away for the time being. It doesn't matter if it's later, next year or the next year. But I kindly ask Mr. Chen to give a rough interval. The time error is preferably within 6 months, and Luoyuan Academy is also good. Given the corresponding detailed arrangements, Mr. Chen is a highly educated person. This kind of thing can definitely be handled with ease, and you can do it on the spot, and you may not need to prepare a draft. Our Luoyuan Academy attaches great importance to this precious opportunity. From the number of Confucian students attending the lectures, whether there is a need for a selection mechanism, are they the screening and control of consulting questions, etc., etc., we will make detailed adjustments according to the date of Mr. Chen's lectures." Chen Pingan liked this kind of "you're welcome." After thinking for a moment, he went over the planned itinerary, then it is tentatively scheduled for the end of next year. If there is any advance or delay, I will inform Luoyuan Academy in advance. Chao Gun said in a heartfelt voice, "The shadow of the famous tree of a person is indeed as rumored, and Gao Xuandu is indeed true. Lord Yingguan is better at this, is it right?" The old scrofulariaceae said, "It's not a strong rival between you and me." According to the evaluation method made by Guozhuzhou, Gao Shanchang belongs to Song Gaoyuan and Deng Liang at most. Song Gaoyuan rubbed the space between his brows, and entered the summer palace together, "But I am not as good as you guys, and I am full of flattery, so I will be excluded by you like this." Chen Pingan asked a key question: is there any conclusion on the ownership of this mine, the Confucian Temple and the Academy? Gao Xuandu shook his head, just giving his own guess: either the virtuous people live here and can convince the public, or not. If there are waves, the Fuyazu mountains and rivers, which are already crumbling, will become precarious. On the contrary, Fuyazu mountains will stabilize up and down. I believe that the Confucian Temple will be willing to stand by and be happy to see the success. But if there is no such convincing figure, this road, the ore veins, may be used to mend the broken mountains and rivers of a continent. Of course, the Jinpu dynasty will get a certain amount of compensation. Compensate? Chen Pingan asked curiously. Have you estimated the overall value of the jade mine reserves? Gao Xuandu said, at present, there is only a rough estimate, converted into immortal money. The specific amount is a top secret of the Academy, and should not be disclosed. Let me talk about the results of my on-the-spot investigation in Chuanzhou Mountain, which is enough to support an ordinary sect without any income, and the expenses of thousands of people for thousands of years. Sure, by chance, occupied Quan Jiaoshan. From the time he founded the sect to the establishment of the sect, everything between after that, there will be 1,000 years of prosperity. Chen Pingan asked, what is ordinary? Gao Xuandu replied, what I call ordinary is to have a founder who is hopeful to prove the way and ascend, 2 or 3 chief practitioners who are in the Jade Royal realm and the Middle 5 realm. More than 100 people, including more than 20 people who opened the peak. The monks of the lower 5 realms are probably 900 people. Because the dialogue between the two sides did not use the means of voice, Xie Songhua was speechless, and couldn't help asking, is this considered normal? Gao Xuandu said, of course it is considered a first-class sect now, and it is only 1 line away from the top. After 1,000 years, it may not be so. After all, the vacancy vacated by a 15th realm cannot be filled by a few more brand new 14th realms. Gao Xuandu asked suddenly, Mr. Qin. Chen Pingan laughed dumbfounded. Because they guessed the other party's mind. This jade vein, since the Confucian Temple is tentatively designated as unowned, who will take it? Rather than handing it over to those sneaky people who plan behind the scenes, why don't you, Qin Shanzhu, come and have a look? This is an open and aboveboard, take it in a proper way. At Liyuan Academy in Fuyazu, at least I, Gao Xuandu, are willing to help to say a few words of justice. As long as Luopa Mountain has a good relationship with the Jinpu dynasty, only the Zhongtu Confucian Temple will be left. Sighed. Aren't the current academy scholars too bold? When Yu was like this, breaking the rules and going directly to Fingdu to arrest the culprit. Ning Yao turned his head to look at one place, and reminded, either show up, or stay away. Chen Ping followed Ning Yao's line of sight and thought about it. The appearance of the other party was indeed reasonable and not too unexpected. After a long time of cultivation, the higher you climb, the more acquaintances you will have. The sword-carrying woman in a white dress and mask, with a misty celestial aura, is the future Beta Sheng Yan, who is willing to follow Jing Juzhong, the female ghost sword fairy, Jing Dan. She taught swordsmanship from Yunu's lineage, Zhou Shenji, one of the 10 people in Shenzhou of Zhongtu in the past, and Chu Cheng's lineage from the old sword fairy. It's just that compared to Zhou Shenji, the lineage of Yunu's kendo has always accepted women but not men. Although there is no particular emphasis on passing it on as a single line, it is indeed incomparable in number compared to the luxuriant branches of the Xiuqing lineage. After thinking about it, He always felt that this lady looked familiar. It's just that there is a lot of makeup in the eyes, and I can't remember it for a while. After thinking about it, I finally remembered that there was a lifelike painted mural on the wall of the patriarch dojo of my sect. It seemed to be the woman with the sword in front of me. Shuizhou praised with her heart, wow, this female ghost sister is really good looking, and she has her own merits with Song Jianxian. After Jing Dan appeared, she stood upright, and her voice was cold. I just got a message from Mr. Jing's flying sword, this vein. He has exchanged his merits and the Chinese Temple of Confucianism for his own property, and ordered me to cut it into 3 with a sword, and one of them will be free of charge. Donated to Laiyuan Academy to make up for the lack of Fuyazhou's geographical advantages. 1 is the foundation for Gu Kan to choose the site of Chuanjiao Mountain and set up his sect. The last one is for the local qi refiners in Fuyao Continent to take it by themselves. As for them, they use genealogy methods to intrigue and each show their magical powers. The fish expelled Xiaomi, and then was expelled by the big fish. He still used wild repair methods, tore his face, and fought to death. The suzerain Gu Kan and I would not care about it, let alone take responsibility. Well-intentioned and well-meaning scattered a lot of money on the ground. There is no reason to care about whether the money pickers are rules or not. Anyway, going around, it will all fall into the money bag of Fuyazhou. If Laiyuan Academy and Gao Shanchang are right, if you have any objections to this, you can go to the gate of Baidi City to discuss with me. Of course, the content after the word "as for" is not Mr. Zheng's words, but my own. Claim. Gao Xuandu didn't want to intervene in this matter because of Baidi City and Jing Juzhong, so he still said in a rigid manner on how to act according to the circumstances. I will verify this matter with Zhongtu Confucian Temple and Laiyuan Academy. As long as it is confirmed that it is correct, Gu Kan will be in Chuanjiao. The sect was established in the mountain world, and you divided this jade vein into 3, I believe there is no problem. Jing Dan said, Mr. Jing Gaoi told me in the letter that if Laiyuan Academy can't cut and refine jade mines and make up for the lack of land in the continent, I can do it for you. As long as you think it's appropriate, I will stay here for a month. For the rest of the day, cooperate with Lai Source Academy. Gao Xuandu nodded and said, then I'll have Sword Immortal Lao to help me. Jing Dan couldn't help but look at Confucian scholars. Today's scholars are thick-skinned. Gao Xuandu turned his head to look at the green shirt. Chen Pingan smiled and said, I am not the owner of this Fengshui cave. I deported everyone earlier because I had to do it. In fact, Senior Zheng and I are both guests. Where do seniors want to fall? Just discuss it with Laiyuan Academy. I'm not qualified to point fingers. Jing Dan looked at Ning Yao, who was the junior of Dao age and the senior of swordsmanship, with a rare smile, and said softly, Mr. Jing changed the topic at the end of the letter and didn't name me. Dao said who it was, and the letter only said that if someone is willing to accept this gift, it will be a congratulatory gift to celebrate the landing of Feishing City. Then all the previous decisions can be voided. Let this person move the mind to the colorful world, and let me open and guard the gate with a sword for a moment. Do your best. Ning Yao said, Senior, thank Mr. Zheng for your help. She hesitated for a moment. I will take a small piece of jade myself, and treat it as a congratulatory gift from Mr. Zheng. During the next meeting of the Ancestral Hall of Feishing City, I will report this matter and record it in the record. Jing Dan smiled even more when he heard the words, and he had some good feelings. There is always no reason to say it. Maybe it was because he saw someone similar to himself that Jing Dan was so close to him. Yu Yu and Situ Jiu looked at each other and smiled. Ning Yao was not as unkind and self-directed as the rumors said. Scrofulariace smiled and said, if Lord Guan makes a move, he will definitely cut off a large piece of jade, make a chair, and place it generously in the Patriarch Hall of Feishing City. In this way, the fire is a bit overdone, and it is still not good. Sure, there is a high probability that it will be placed in the Summer Palace. If this is done, Mr. Zheng will be regarded as an anonymous guest of the hermit official line. If he passes by the colorful world in the future, he should be a guest no matter what. Afterwards, Jing Dan bid farewell, and found a secluded mansion by the riverside of Fengshui Grotto to settle down, waiting for the next news from Laiyuan Academy. The person who formed a contract with her, that Jade Realm swordsman Gao Yi, has already released the contract, but this time they are still traveling across continents together, and Jingdan still has some trivial matters that need to be finished. Previously, Gao Yi chased all the way to the Great Wall of Sword Qi, and troubled Wei Yudian of the Shaanxi Sword School. In fact, it was only a superficial reason, and there was a deeper reason. Accepted, inheriting the sword veins left by the native sword fairy of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, Jingdan can help him fight for the day. What she implies is that Gao Yi is not stupid, a sword fairy in the Yupu realm who is only 2 years old. Lixiazu is the oldest in history, one of the young suzerains. The brains are still quite enough, knowing her thoughts. She intends to support him as the #1 person on Lixiazu Mountain, and replace Jinghao of Qinggong Mountain. But when he arrived at the Great Wall of Sword Qi, everything was not going his way. First, he didn't even see Wei Yudian's face, and then met a strange girl in a sable hat on the road. The series of events that followed caught Gao Jianxian by surprise, causing Gao Zhongzhu to come here full of ambition, but in the end he didn't make it to the top of the city, to try his luck and seek a chance. Gao Yi is of course not reconciled to such a sad ending and returning to Haoran's hometown in despair. Then Jingdan gave the reason, saying that here, if the last hermit official does not recognize you, it means that the entire Great Wall of Sword Qi does not recognize you, so don't wishful thinking and laugh at you generously. If you insist on going to the top of the city, you will only embarrass her, the Taoist guardian. Gao Yi sat in the water pavilion, with bamboo curtains hanging on 3 sides, facing her, leaving one side for plum blossoms and thousands of trees. As long as you step into the water pavilion, you will find that there is a unique cave here, and the scenery is very different from the Fengshui cave in the underground cave. Jingdan changed into a woman's home attire, and the saber was hanging on the pavilion pillar. There was an unidentified maid in a bun who was cooking wine. On the table, the wine was bright green and the glass was sparkling purple. Jingdan occasionally leaves Gao Yi's mind, and has always been fond of food and food. All the utensils for cooking wine are old items from wealthy families in ancient times. Jingdan is indeed a very elegant woman. Outside the water pavilion, there is a mountain-colored green pavilion, and a large plum blossom is as gorgeous as the sea. Jingdan is holding a fan, which is full of frost and snow, and the breeze is full of sleeves. Gao Yi glanced at the ugly maid cooking wine, always felt that she was out of place in this world. I remember that Jingdan called Yi Huansha maid. The maidservant is also like a wooden man without emotions and desires and no sense of intelligence. Gao Yi sighed, and asked cautiously, "You were just invited to become the sage of Baidi City, and you don't have a genealogical status. Are you really not registered with my sect, and hung up the statue of Patriarch Shan together in the Patriarch Hole?" Looking through the history of Haoran, which founder of the Zongzitu Xianfu didn't have a few wonderful and mysterious stories, and didn't meet a few high-ranking scholars with obscure roots. Jinghao's Qinggong Mountain has it, and of course the Shaanxi sword sect also has it. Jingdan said indifferently, "There is no banquet in the world that will never end. If the fate comes, it will gather and then it will disperse. This is the law of nature. Yu Gao Yi is a Jade Plain state who has established a school after all. You don't have to be a woman's generation to pretend." Although both parties the temporary release of the contract did not wait for you to get out of the house and fly up in the daytime, but the benefits that should be given to you have not missed you at all. In fact, you have withdrawn the future income in advance. There is no hidden danger, so don't get it cheap and sell it good. The ruins of the ancient cave in Lixiazu came out at the right time. Jinghao and Shunanyuan, who were determined to win, had already withdrawn, especially Jinghao, who had invested a lot in the early stage, and many painstaking efforts and plans were in vain. You are a little jade realm, and you can take this place in the hands of 2 ascendants. What is there to be dissatisfied with? If you talk about blessed land, there is still the possibility of poor management, which will become tasteless. This kind of cave, but you can use it, just use it. During this trip together, I intentionally showed up many times and handed the sword twice, just to make some people with hearts and ghosts not dare to attack you easily. But you have to know what's going on here. When I go to Baidi City to serve as the guard for Mr. Zheng, you and I will it settled. If you encounter difficulties in the future, you can go to Baidi City and kowtow to see if I will answer you. Shu Nanyuan, the master of Tianyu Cave, has just entered the Ascension realm not long ago. In this way, Liuxia continent has 2 Ascension realms sitting in the mountains and rivers. What really made Jinghao and Shu Nanyuan give up their hearts and willingly give up a cave site was not because Jingdan was in the same Ascension realm with them, not because of her swordsmanship and master's biography, but because Jingdan took the initiative to reveal the secret of the sky, and she was about to rush to the sealed cave site. Mountain Baidi City served as the gatekeeper. Otherwise, once the monks in the Ascension realm have torn their skins, overt and covert methods will emerge one after another. Apart from swordsmanship, Jingdan thinks he can't compare with those 2 deep-rooted snakes in Lixiaozu. So the only existence they were afraid of was Jingzhuzhong. Gao Yi said helplessly, understood. Once we say goodbye, we will become strangers. After all, the 2 parties have formed a bond and have lived together for many years. Jingdan is like watching Gao Yi step by step from a boy to today. She is still willing to give a few more words. I have already brought you to meet Ding Fai and learned about your predestined relationship with Wei Yudian. Ding Fai also admitted that you are the reincarnation of that sword fairy, and Wei Yudian's natal flying sword Xiaoyan really belongs to you. Predecessor relics. When you were young, you had a lot of seemingly inexplicable entanglements with Wei Yudian, and you have a correct solution. In the future, you don't have to entangle too much with Shaanxi Sword Sect and Fenzhou Webster. As for Wei Yudian herself and her flying sword Jian, since you have made a gentleman's agreement with Ding Fai, you should act as a man when dealing with affairs. Commitment. Gao Yi nodded. According to the agreement, it was Wei Yudian who owed him a sword questioning. Anyway, the time and place were determined by her, and she was not bullied. She is now just a nascent soul. Gao Yi's expression was gloomy. He just couldn't figure it out now. If that person surnamed Shin insisted on disturbing such a scene, would he act too domineeringly, which made Sect Master Gao panic. Jingdan said, I am kind enough to use Shanding Fai with his saber to surrender the truth and cooperate with the flying sword to receive the gods, and he is also a descendant of the ancient god. If he really wants to target you, you, Gao Yi, have no chance to grow up, died a long time ago. It was also because Ding Fai wanted to mediate and help the 2 of you, so that you can solve the predestined relationship in the previous life with the good relationship in this life. Gao Yi said, with you here, if Ding Fai really dares to cast spells on me, it's hard to say who will die suddenly. Zheng Danyu said earnestly, Gao Yi, listen to my persuasion. Without my secret protection, if you are always so small-minded, no matter how many chances you have to get something out of your hands, it will be difficult to achieve great things in the end. It only takes one wrong move, and you will be defeated. Forever. The maid leaned forward, holding her sleeve with one hand, and refilling Gao Yi's glass with the other. Gao Yi drank sullenly, and did not forget to thank the maid, and she smiled. But Jingdan angrily reprimanded, Huansha maid, how dare you be charming? The maid smiled and said, a woman who truly forgets her country and regards other countries as her hometown, why bother to vent her anger on others? Jingdan spoke harshly, and was about to reprimand the yarn-washing maid, but the maid seemed to speak for her, 10 slaps on the mouth, as a warning to others. Jingdan still wanted to say something, but the servant girl helped to say, the fox Maisie will harm the country and the people, death is not a pity. The maid slowly refilled Jingdan's glass and said with a smile, I just shut up. Jingdan sneered and said, what's the matter? Relying on the severing ties with Mr. Fan, the merchant, do you think he will be able to enter the 14th realm in the near future, or are you sure that I will not dare to kill you? The ugly maid turned a deaf ear and looked at Gao Yi, smiled and said, "Sovereign Gao, you don't know something. The founder of the Shaanxi sword sect, Hua Furong, is also the master of Wei Yudian." The two sword immortals, Yao and Yao, looked at each other irresistibly. Wei Yudian is Hua Furong's most valued and beloved direct disciple, and it is precisely because of the deep love for her from the previous generation that Master Ding asked her to go to the Great Wall of Sword Qi to avoid the limelight. So Sect Master Gao didn't choose a good location to trouble Wei Yudian at the Sword Qi Great Wall. It seems that he ran into a young hermit by accident, but it was actually all in Sect Master Ding's calculations. Fortunately, Sovereign Gao met Qin Yingguan, not Qin Yingguan's Taoist companion. To be honest, it is no longer the usual fortune and fate. Gao Yi was speechless, with lingering fear in his heart. It was rare for Jingdan not to interrupt the yarn maid, and when the latter filled Gao Yi's glass of wine again, Jingdan sneered and said, "Being a good suzerain is more difficult than becoming a Jade Realm by luck." Double. Gao Jianxian, if you dare to underestimate anyone in the upper 5 realms, there will be another short-lived sect in Lixiaozu soon. Gao Yi raised the wine glass with both hands, raised it with the two seniors, said something humbly to be taught, and drank it down in one gulp. The handmaid who washed the gauze stood up, stretched out her hand to lift a corner of the curtain, and murmured, "In the chaos of separation and reunion, in the peaceful world, the men and women on the road are all people who go out to look at flowers." Jingdan smiled happily. "You and I are both ghosts, but we couldn't make any further progress. It's really worth drinking 3 glasses of wine to be taken first by that Su Wan." Huansha maid sighed softly. The change between dragon and snake among wooden geese is not so easy to do. At the highest point of the Fengshui cave where the wall was chiseled into a private residence, Chen Pingan bid farewell to Gao Xuandu, returned to the lobby with Ning Yao, looked at the seats that seemed to be facing each other, and waved his sleeves, and the chairs formed a circle. Chen Pingan randomly picked a chair near the gate. Chao Gun took off his boots, and sat cross-legged. Scrofulariaceae slumped on the chair. Song Gaoyuan still habitually sat upright. Back then, in the summer palace, apart from a small desk piled up with archives, there were also futons, bamboo chairs, and small benches. Depending on your hobbies, you couldn't have a few. In the extremely precious leisure time, you would often take a nap on the small chair, with your legs put it on the desk. Guazigia's level is not high, but she is very energetic. Her rest is to wipe the small bamboo box on the table with her sleeve, take a few breaths on the bamboo box, and rub it repeatedly. Gu Jianlong likes to lie on the ground with his head under the table. Lin Junbai likes to play scores alone, while Peng Yuanji is used to being in a daze with a bitter look on his face. Luo Zhini always deliberately doesn't look at anyone. Wang Xinshui often asks Mr. Yingguan if his shoulders are sore, "Don't be too tired," and praises me Daijian Xian has outstanding military exploits. Chen Pingan took out several kinds of xianjia fermented rice and dozens of pots from the things close at hand, and pushed them to the center of the lobby for everyone to take by themselves. Pu He and his family were well off, and they followed suit, and there were dozens of jugs of wine on the ground in no time. Ning Yao thought for a while, then got up and left. Xie Songhua and Song Pin also walked out of the lobby. When Ning Yao left, Scrofulary came to Chen Pingan's side with lightning speed. Chao Gun's skill was not weaker than Scrofulary, so he sat beside Chen Pingan on one left and one on the right. Chen Pingan sat on the ground with the flagon in his hand, held up the flagon with Song Gaoyuan on the opposite side, and took a big gulp of wine from each other, while complaining that Song Gaoyuan didn't understand etiquette. As the half-host of the sect in Fuyazu, "No, I have to mention 3 in a row." Chen Pingan reached out and grabbed the arms of the 2 people beside him, and said with a little more gravity, "I miss you so much." Ning Yao and the others started walking outside the house. Xia Songhua said with a smile, "We are all, if you know the basics, you don't need to give the Lord Ingguan this face on purpose. If you want to say that those 7 people who have never been to the Great Wall of Sword Chi have long admired Chen Pingan. Today's appearance like this is even more admirable, and it's not bad for this bit of face. Ning Yao said helplessly, "I'm here, he can't drink." Song Pin smiled and said, "I heard that the family of Situ Jianxian is a recognized beauty den." Ning Yao said, "Not long ago, there was a girl named Wang Gua who visited Luopa Mountain with the sect. Chen Ping met her face to face and gave her some pointers. He said this kind of thing himself." CS Songhua clicked his tongue and said, "My Lord Ingguan didn't make a move on his own, he really reached the state of proficiency and perfection." Song Pin said, "Isn't it true that there is no silver 300 taels here?" Lu Su came later, and when he entered the lobby smelling of wine, he yelled, "Everyone hurry up to make room, the great talent Lu is here." Don't look at Lu Su, who is usually a boring gourd. If he doesn't open his mouth, he will be fine, but when he scolds Puha, there are a bunch of Beiju Luzhou's elegant words mixed in when he opens his mouth, which is really a scolding. Yu Yu hurriedly pretended to persuade the fight, feeling really relieved in his heart. He didn't think much of Yu Yu and Situ Jiu, but he admired Lu Su, the young master of Luomihi who didn't have to pretend to be poor, and everyone thought he was poor. Old Jianqiu thought that if he had a Taoist companion, and another son, almost like Lu Su. It's a good thing I didn't hear the truth, Lu Su in this reunion. They seldom talked about the Great Wall of Sword Chi, but mostly talked about the grand trend of the world, the customs, illusions and anecdotes of each continent. Of course, because of those young girls, they would talk about the youngest and famous genius sword cultivator in Haoran Tianxia. This couldn't get around Qinli. Chen Pingan just learned that Qinli is already the bottleneck of the Golden Core realm, and he is about to retreat. He may not be rushing to break through the realm, but there are signs of the bottleneck loosening. Chen Pingan didn't mean to imply that they should not slack off in sword practice by Qinli. Instead, he hoped that they would walk more with each other and meet to travel across continents. Qinli, a disciple of Duqui Jinhu Lizai, has the reputation of little hermit official. Before Qinli was taken away from his hometown by Li Kai, he made a special trip to the wine shop of the second shopkeeper and wrote a "Nothing Happened" card. Qinli, the sword is dim, and the flying sword is sleepy. 100-year-old sword fairy is within your reach. You must know that the sword immortal of the Great Wall of Sword Chi is not a jade realm. This means that if Qinli wants to accomplish this feat, this young sword cultivator who has entered the Golden Core in Haoran Tianxia and is a first-rank secret alchemy, must first strive to become a jade Rao within Jiazi Dao's age, and then given the remaining 30 to 40 years of my life, I will grind down the layer of jade uncooked and become a fairyland in one fell swoop. If other people are full and support them, they will be more expensive. Since Qinli himself said that it is easy to get, he must become a fairy at the age of 70 or 80. Jing Jianqiu, Qinli is not bragging and not drafting. Qinli is also the common imaginary enemy of Shuizhou Yedu and his group of fellow villagers and peers. Even Baixuan's kind of, "I'm not afraid when the Heavenly King is here, because I am the Heavenly King," in Jing Daifeng's words, it means that this child is very talented, and if he practices Iron Head Kung Fu for a day, it is as powerful as others for a year. But by Xian occasionally mentioning Qinli, there is a bit of a guilty conscience to avoid the edge, and I must add that Qinli is a few years older than me. Of course, for Chao Gun and Scrofulariaceae, there is an extra little hermit official, Qinli, and their seniors in the Summer Palace just sighed with emotion. My way is not bad, and the future generations are awesome. Let's take a look at a few teenagers. Drinking is not helpful, they are already drunk, but Shuizhou and the others, the more they drink, the more they feel that alcohol is just a mediocre thing. Lu Su and those few immortal sword cultivators got together and punched a few times. He sat shoulder to shoulder with Yu Yu at some point, put his arms around the latter's neck, and beat his old friend on the head hard, saying that you are a waste. How did I make a friend like you? In fact, I was even more, back then will lose to Michio flour. Chen Pingon has already started looking for wine to drink. He said that there is a secret way of reading that is not handed down, called stealing in the middle of the night and killing people in back alleys. The young Ingguan, maybe not so young Ingguan, is really drunk. He also said that he was very happy to meet you this year, this month, this day, this place, this situation, this scene. He even said that my generation of sword cultivators should have this heart and dare to think like this. Everyone encourages me. The old kendo in the world ends with me, and the new kendo in the world begins with me. He finally said that I am not drunk, that you are not good at drinking, not even persuading you to drink, hiccuped, stretched out your arm proudly, turned your head to see her with drunken eyes, and really woke up. Seeing this scene, everyone roared with laughter. Ning Yao had no choice but to sit down to drink with Xie Songhua and Song Pin. Since the opportunity was indeed rare, it could be regarded as the second round of drinking. Chen Pingon sat alone on the steps outside the house, with his hands wrapped around his sleeves, dazed in a daze. I don't know when, He Xiangting and Yu Qingzhang came outside the house. The two left their hometown and chose to leave Luopa Mountain. They were sitting next to the earliest Lord Ingguan, the later Master Chao and the last Master Chen Shan. Chen Ping came back to his senses, smiled and stretched out his hands to hold their heads, rubbed them lightly, then put his hands on his knees. His eyes were gentle, and he didn't say anything. AP, LT, Turks equals clearup, AP, GT. Sword of Coming Chapter 11-13. The sword worship platform on Luopa Mountain in Beipingzu, the peaks of Qingping sword sect in Tonggishao, plus He Xiangting and Yu Qingzhang in Lixiazu where he and Yu Yu apprenticed. If you add the young girls who were taken away from the Great Wall of Sword Qi earlier by Xie Songhua, the Sword Fairy. Life is involuntary, the east, west, north and south are like duckweeds. 9 sword cultivator embryos who left the Great Wall of Sword Qi with Chen Pingon, Master Chao, whose alias was Chao Mo at the time, took them out of the broken cave in the Jade Hairpin, and met them on a small boat on the sea. Only Bai Xian and Nalan Yuji is in the Dongfu realm, now Bai Xian is in the Longmen realm, and King Sun Chen, who is the most diligent in sword practice and the most determined in mind, is also in the sea-watching realm. After all, it is still a short period of time since I came to Howren, and nearly half of the children have not entered the 5th level of middle school. For example, there are Yao Xiaoyan, who has the most number of flying swords in her life, and Yu Qingzhang, whose flying sword is named Dazhuniang, is ranked as the second highest rank in the Summer Palace. On the contrary, He Xiangting, who likes to read, turned on the lamp to read at night during the heavy rain, repeatedly reading Swordsmanship Jingjing and several local chronicles. Up Master Yu Yu jumped up. Chen Pingon asked with a smile, He Xiangting, I heard from Qing Chaolu that you actually want to learn boxing. He Xiangting blushed slightly. Bai Xian, Yu Xiehui, He Gu, they also want to learn boxing from Master Chao. Chen Pingon said, if Bai Xian knew you were a girl, he wouldn't be so out of tune when he usually speaks. He Xiangting's face flushed. It turns out that she has been pretending to be a boy for the past few years, and she has been able to fool Bai Xian and Yu Xiehui, but of course she cannot fool the young hermit. Chen Ping hesitated for a moment, thought carefully, and then smiled and said, I know that the 9 of you, in the eyes of me, Miyu, Cui Zongzhu, Zhou Chief and our so-called seniors, your sword practice qualifications and future achievements ranking. He Xiangting was actually the one who had the least confidence in himself. After all, Bai Xian and King Sun Chen, whom Bai Xian nicknamed Dead Fish Eyes, their aptitude can be seen at a glance. If evaluated in the terms of Howren antiques, it belongs to opening the door. Of the other 7 of them, Yao Xiaoyan has 3 natal flying swords, He Gu and Yu Xiaohui each have their own strengths. In short, He Xiangting feels that he is too ordinary. Even for a long time, the little girl felt that the reason why she was led out of the Great Wall of Sword Qi by the young hermit was due to the military exploits accumulated by her family and preachers. Just luck. First release. Well, it was because of the shadow of the ancestors that he was appointed as an official. But because he had just broken through and entered the 5th middle class, Yi Xiangting had a little more confidence. After all, whether a sword cultivator has the heart or not, in the end, the level of the realm and the speed of breaking through the realm have the final say. Yu Qingzhang looked sad, and said, no matter what other people's rankings are, I must be at the bottom. Chen Pingan shook his head and smiled and said, Yu Qingzhang, do you know that your flying sword is named Duanyang? That day, May 15th, is the old Duanyang festival. I later conceived the natal flying sword, and it was also at noon on this day. Chen Pingan said, in the past, the priests of our Sword Qi Great Wall would hold sacrificial ceremonies on this day, but that is the old calendar. In fact, this is the same as the customs of the ancient Shu region of Aquarius Island. At first, May 15th was regarded as the Duanyang festival, not the current Duanwu May 5th. Luopa Mountain belongs to the ancient Shu mountains and rivers in a broad sense, so I guess you will still be an ancient Shu for the key points of cultivation and opportunities for enlightenment in the future. I didn't tell you about this before. I was afraid that you would have a rebellious mentality. Just because I told you, I knew it was so, but it was not so. Of course it doesn't matter now. 9 children, you too are the most alienated from me on the surface. You haven't said a word or two. From Hai to Tonggishao to Aquarius Island, you gave me a face all the way. It's nothing. There are calculations, there are small calculations, so I often tell myself, who will be the closest to me in the future, maybe it will be the negation of you. Not only the Feijin name Dajuniang, but even your name Qingzhang is also particular. To tell you the truth, your master, Yu, is shameless, and being an enshrinement is not enough, so he insists on interfering to get you out of Luoluo Mountain. Taking it away disrupted many long-term plans of Cui Zongzhu and me. He Xiangting blushed, and Yu Qingzhang felt strange. He always felt that Mr. Ingguan at this moment was very human and a living person. The last time, it was still a small boat floating in the sea, that Master Chow who was sitting alone on the bow and eating a bowl of rice with his back to them. An old sword cultivator was scolded several times in the house. Puha scolded him as a trash. Situ Jiu also scolded him for having no military exploits. Going to the Great Wall of Sword Qi was just a waste of time. Even that drink was too high. The drunk fairy Song scolded him. How could he have the face to go to Luopa Mountain to abduct the 2 children? The old sword cultivator wanted to come out to take a breath, and accompanied the 2 disciples to chat with the Lord Ingguan, but the old man only stepped out of the threshold with 1 foot, and heard Qin Shan's complaint again. The old man Jinxiu had no choice but to take back that foot, and turn back to the lobby, resolutely not going outside to make trouble. Chen Pingan said these long-suffering words, feeling refreshed, held up the vermilion wine gourd, took a sip of the wine, smiled and said, Sect Master Cui's sleeves are tormenting people's hearts. King Chen and Empress Bai Xian, it was Yu Qingzhang who persisted the longest. Later, when Yu saw you, he observed secretly for a long time, and he also felt that Yu Qingzhang can be ranked 3rd overall. Yu Qingzhang couldn't believe it. Ranking so high. Isn't it a surprise? I can't help but ask myself, so I'm so strong. Chen Ping smiled and helped to express his confusion, and then gave his own evaluation. I also think that Yu Qingzhang has good qualifications, a good heart, and full of resilience. Just because their hometown is in the Great Wall of Sword Qi, almost every generation of younger sword cultivators will feel that they are not very good. In history, veritable strong men have emerged in large numbers, and there are so many genuine geniuses that many geniuses dare not consider themselves geniuses. Chen Pingon shook the flagon in his hand, squinted his eyes and smiled. It's like some kind of wine with great stamina. Yu Qingzhang was speechless. Chen Ping said with a smile, but we can't, of course we don't want to see to death your future achievements. He Xiangting, she is now at a higher level than you. Because it is also reading, He Xiangting was able to read every book from thick to thin, but Yu Qingzhang, who also likes to read books, is not good at it. He Xiangting has read a lot of truths in his heart from the book, and she began to recognize Haoren Tianxia in a limited way, but Yu Qingzhang still in doubt the truth of the book and the morals outside the book, maybe except for the occasional one or two or three things. Deep in my heart I always reject everything except the Great Wall of Sword Qi. He Xiangting said shyly, Master Chao, is my way of reading really that good? Chen Pingon smiled and said, I am a close disciple of the literary sage lineage, or a gentleman appointed by the Zhongtu Confucian Temple. Would I talk nonsense about studying? Yu Qingzhang was silent for a moment, rubbed his cheeks vigorously with both hands, and said softly, I remember uncle, and my swordsman preacher, before the battle out of the city, they all admired and appreciated Master Chao very much. The shopkeeper is the kind of outlander who is willing to look at the Great Wall of Sword Qi with sincerity. A man who would feel sorry for Ningyao Xiangzhong is not a sword cultivator. He Xiangting's grandfather also had a similar opinion. Afterwards, several of their sword cultivators violated the strict military order issued by Fei Jin in the Summer Palace, and they went out of the city to fight without authorization. On the top of the city, there is no sword repairer to rescue him. Chen Ping just kept silent and didn't comment, and didn't tell the two children in detail what was right and wrong here. On the road of growth, the person who untied the bell needs to untie the bell, who needs to untie the knot by himself. Yu Qingzhang and He Xiangting were taken out of their hometown by Master Chao, the culprit. The two children traveled together in foreign lands, and they actually began to gradually understand what the young hermit officials did back then. The problem was that when they began to understand the decision of the Summer Palace, they felt even more uncomfortable. Maybe things are so weird. Only when you know right and wrong can you care. I remember that the big white goose once said something that they didn't understand. People who don't distinguish between black and white, and those who only decide right or wrong based on interests, only deal with things, not themselves. In addition to teaching swordsmanship, Master Yu would tell them about the local customs during his travels, but as a master, he almost never reasoned with them. Only once, when he arrived at Lixiazu, he deliberately used plain words. His tone seemed to be off topic. If the same thing is done by different people, well, it may not be right. Bad, not necessarily wrong. He Xiangting said, Master Chao, we will often return to Luopa Mountain in the future. Yu Qingzhang hummed. Chen Pingon said with a smile, on the side of Liuxia continent, you must also practice hard and break through steadily. In the future, Master Chao will hold your thighs. In the vast mountains and rivers of the three continents to the west, you can walk the rivers and lakes under a hidden alias. You only need to report Xiangyu's sword Xian, He Jian with the title of immortal. You can settle things without using your hands. Yu Qingzhang grinned and said, I can't do it for the time being. You can report the name of our master first. He Xiangting gave a blank look. Which pot was not opened and which pot was lifted? The master and the old man were about to be scolded in the lobby. Chen Ping joked with a smile. I remembered that before becoming a sword fairy, no matter whether you were alone or with friends to go out to practice, outside Lixiazu, if you met an old guy who didn't have long eyes and a high level, who dare not take you if your masters take it seriously, you just say that you have an anonymous little master named Chen Mingping. Let them weigh it. He Xiangting blinked his eyes. Master Chao, will it be more effective to name Sister Ning and pretend that she is our little master? Chen Ping's gold-lettered signboard sighed, "In Haoran Tianxia, Zhuzhou Mountains and Rivers, my name is definitely enough." Ning Yao walked out of the lobby and sat next to He Xiangting. "Are you okay?" Chen Pingan put away the wine gourd with lightning speed, and said vigorously, "I didn't drink too much, this little wine, drizzle." He Xiangting, who was caught upright, hurriedly called the uninterested Yu Qingzhang, got up, said goodbye and left. They crossed the threshold together, and turned their heads to look at the steps outside the door at the same time. It happened that Chen Pingan was also turning his head to look at them. Chen Ping said with a smile, "Your master's wine tastes very good, please help to block the wine. That city Jianxian is pretending to be drunk. I know exactly how much he can drink. He is pretending to be drunk and really swearing." A certain sword fairy from the bowtie's nest in the room said that he was really drunk, don't blame him for speaking badly, and tried his best to persuade others to drink, and immediately lay back when he heard this. Chen Pingan had gone to Jinwu Mountain before, and at the foot of the mountain, he met Huan Shu, who was in charge of the lamp of the Patriarch Hall. His seniority was very high, and he turned out to be the master uncle of the mountain lord Wedding. This means that Huan Shu is either the younger brother of the founder of Jinwu Mountain in Beipingzu, or the ancestral family of the Zhongtu military family assigned to a certain martial arts temple in Beipingzu to accompany the sages. In short, if Huan Shu is really willing to take care of things, he can take care of not only the internal affairs of Jinwu Mountain, but also Fengshua Temple. In the Longji Mountain belonging to Jinwu Mountain, 30% of the sword sharpening stones that have not yet been excavated can be donated to Luopa Mountain. Jinwu Mountain has made 3 requests, one of which is related to the flying city of Wucai Tianxia. Ning Yao nodded and agreed, "It's a small thing. It's a good thing. The covenant on the mountain is much more reliable than the love oath between men and women in the city." Chen Pingan asked, "Has Chen Ji thought about when to leave the mountain?" Ning Yao said, "Still watching. A person's sudden wealth often depends on fate and luck, because the ancestors have accumulated negative virtues, and with the shadow of the ancestors paving the way, the descendants of future generations will seem to have had great luck and make a fortune. A family or sect has a long stream of water, and it is steady and steady, which makes it even more powerful." Ning Yao said, "Since the banquet is held on the 5th day of May, I will try to come here 2 or 3 days in advance, and come here at the beginning of May." Chen Pingan subconsciously scratched his face like a millet grain, no matter how you all guessed it right. Am I the fool? Not only did he meet Chen Yingguan, he also chatted with Ning Yao, a 14th-level swordsman. In Ruiqing, Tian Xian, who was known as the Patriarch's Hall for her clear thinking, felt that she hadn't been hit by the Su Jun, Wang Jia's spell before, as if she was sorry for the encounter. Then there was a nascent Soul Realm sword cultivator named Hua Qinggong, who was also a female sword fairy who was rampant in the western 3 continents of Haoran. She wanted to go to the Dragon Elephant Sword sect of Qi Tingji in Nanba Sa continent to be a guest minister. Named offerings, of course I dare not expect extravagantly for offerings, especially those with higher rankings. As a rule, seats in the Patriarch Hall are required. On the other hand, the standard and salary of the registered guest ministers are not as high as those of the enshrinement. Generally speaking, the more the better. Of course, Gold Sword Immortal Qi's youthful appearance and outstanding function are also one of the reasons. Chen Pingan nodded and said, "I will help deliver the message." Hua Qinggong said politely, "It doesn't matter if it succeeds or not. To be honest, in front of a young hermit official, it is already inappropriate to say that he is going to be a guest minister of another Kendo sect. It's just that his family has a branch with a whole name in Nambaswazu, and established a sect on the mountain that can barely be regarded as second-rate. With the identity of the guest minister of the Dragon Elephant Sword sect, he can take care of him even more. No matter how pure a sword cultivator is, and how free he is physically and mentally compared to others, he is still a person involved in the world of mortals. Chen Ping said with a smile, if it is said that it is an offering, I dare not guarantee it. It is just that I am a guest, and Qi Lao's sword immortal will still give me this little face. Damn it, Sect Master Qi cut off so many returning home, private swords, hidden everywhere in the wilderness. If you don't even give this little face, then don't blame me for going to the Dragon Elephant Sword sect to learn from you. The three of Chao Gun walked out of the lobby smelling of alcohol, and sat down on the steps. Ning Yao occupied one side, and they had to squeeze into the other side of Mr. Ingguan. At that time, Song Gaoyuan really couldn't stand it anymore. How can you have such flattering swordsmen, really don't want the slightest bit of shame, so he pushed Chao Gun away with a shoulder, and sat down first, near the water tower, just like Na Liuyuan, deputy head of the academy. Xian Dus Tone, Song Gaoyuan said with a smile, Master Ingguan has worked hard, when will you come to our Antler Palace as a guest? Chen Pingan asked with a smile, forget it this time, money is tight, and I didn't bring any gifts. By the way, why haven't you three parties formed an alliance yet? Fuyazu Antler Palace, Jinjiazu Ethereal School, and Lixiazu Fangkunzong. The three parties have yet to conclude an alliance with each other. In terms of unfamiliarity before, the relationship on the mountain is average, but there are three life-saving friendships of Chao Gun, plus three sects in the course of that battle. It can be said that they have tried their best. Chao Gun explained with a smile, it is enough for the three sects to accumulate military exploits. They have been busy preparing for the establishment of the next sect in the past few years, but there is not much movement. The respective ancestor halls are not willing to make a big splash on this kind of thing. Our Fengzuan sect next election on the side of Fuyao continent, Liuxia continent is chosen by the ethereal sect where Scrofulariaceae belongs to, and Jinjia continent is chosen by the next sect of Antler Palace. At that time, the next sect will form an alliance. Chen Pingan nodded with a smile and said, the time-honored sect is prudent in doing things. Chen Ping suddenly gasped, who is in the Antler Palace, where Scrofulariaceae belongs to the ethereal school of Fangkunzong? Song Gaoyuan breathed out his nostrils, snorted coldly, and said with a smile, I don't deserve a name. Chen Pingan said mysteriously, Chao Gun, Scrofulariaceae, you too don't know something. When you first entered the Summer Palace in order to prevent the local sword cultivators and foreign sword cultivators from being too separated and easily becoming antagonistic, we came up with a solution that is not a solution, that is, each of us will mix sand into the other side's camp and plant spies, such as Chou Miao asked Wang Xinshui and Gu Jianlong to come closer to me, and I asked Song Gaoyuan and Deng Liang to stand in line with them. Deng Liang is a rebellious guy, a typical one who forgets friends when he sees sex. I agreed, and I will not talk about him. But I persuaded Song Gaoyuan for a long time, and this kid was willing to complain, with a grievance on his face, bite the bullet, bear the humiliation and surrender to the enemy. Chao Dagon and Scrofulariaceae looked at each other in blank dismay, stunned for a long time. Did we misunderstand Song Gaoyuan? Song Gaoyuan was at a loss, and he really felt sorry for his conscience, so he said honestly, there is no such thing at all. Chen Pingan sighed, and said with certainty, you have it. Chao Gun asked softly, where is Lin Junbai, is there no mission? Chen Pingan smiled and said, yes, why not, I had a heart-to-heart talk with him, saying that I regarded him as a candidate for a hidden official cultivated ones, as long as they work hard, the future is boundless. That kid has an official addiction, and he will be confused when he hears this. With bright eyes, think about it carefully, does Lin Junbai have the drive to do things every day? Scrofulariaceae nodded and said, in this way, it all makes sense. In fact, it was not easy for Song Gaoyuan. Deng Liang hoped for the return of a beautiful woman, but Song Gaoyuan didn't ask for anything, just a word of righteousness. Song Gaoyuan wrenched his fingers over there, muttering something. Chao Gun asked curiously, my brother Song Gaoyuan, what are you doing? Scrofulariaceae then asked, Brother Song bears the burden of humiliation. If you have any grievances in your heart, speak out. Song Gaoyuan laughed and said, I'm counting, how many people have been sold by Mr. Yingwen's words? Chou Miao, Wang Xinshui, Gu Jianlong, me, Deng Liang, Lin Junbai. Chen Pingon laughed out loud. None of them intentionally avoided sorrow in their words. After leaving the Summer Palace and the Great Wall of Sword Qi, as long as you think about it, you can talk about it. Chen Pingon raised his arms and raised the flagon high. The other 3 young sword cultivators all carried wine jugs when they went out, so they all performed the same movements. This Chuanzhou mountain is recognized as a piece of sweet pastry that can make even a monk in the Ascension realm feel a little bit excited. An old man and a female cultivator came against the wind, and with the majestic energy, they split a large sea of clouds, and both master and apprentice stopped in the air. The woman's skin is more snowy, but she is wearing a black magic robe, the jade hairpin on her hair is black, and the scabbard is also made of jet black dragon tendons. She is also carrying a mountain travel tool made of black bamboo. What a Lishui that rushes to the sea and never returns, what a Chuanzhou mountain full of morals. A slim waist and limbs pass through the sea of clouds, and a landscape with one eyebrow faces Chanwan. Not all of them may recognize the old monk, but they must recognize the woman who is so beautiful. In Jinjiazu, there is a female sword fairy Song Pin who carries the Fuyao sword, and in Lixiazu Qinggong Mountain, there is a Nietsuea with the Taoist name Monpa. There are 2 daughters in Sanzhou, who are so beautiful in the world. He was talking about her and Song Pin. Now that Nietsuea was recognized, the identity of the old man beside her was revealed. Sure enough, it was Jinghao, the Daoist Qinggong Taibao. Jing Lao ascended. Fuyao and Jinjia continents, after the war, there are no Ascension realm monks. It stands to reason that the existence of the deep mountain top of the city, such as the old fairy Jing, took advantage of the emptiness, whether it was to occupy Chuanzhou mountain alone, or to occupy Chuanzhou mountain in partnership with someone. Wouldn't it be possible to pinch it with his hands? Soon there were monks who thought they wanted to understand the joints. Is it possible that the old sword fairy who pretended to be in the Ascension realm was the first person in Fuyazu in Lixiazu, Lu Wei? Come first and cooperate with others, and then sit back and divide the spoils. It is indeed a fight between Ascension realm, singing the double reed, playing us. Nietsuea said from her heart, Master, that Jing Dan is already here. Jinghao narrowed her eyes and said, since she hasn't shown herself at the gate of Baidi City, she will follow wherever the heartless sect Master Gao is. Although Nietsuea didn't know what secret method Master used to track down the young sword fairy Gao Yi, but that female ghost was really annoying, so the Changyu cave, which was already in Master's pocket, was named Gao. Jinghao caressed her beard for a moment, and there was a lot of discussion along the way, saying that there was a sword cultivator in the Ascension realm who blatantly handed over the sword and expelled everyone from Chuanzhou mountain. What a joke, it's a big joke in the world. Ascension-level sword cultivators, there are only a few, who would go out and run around now. There are only a handful of ascending sword cultivators in Haoran Tianxia, and now the local great swordsmen have been transferred by the Confucian temple to various ferries in the wilderness world. It is the new Feixing Baishang who returned to Beiju Luzhou to retreat and then exited. Also return as usual wild battlefield. As for a certain mountain on a certain continent in the east, it is naturally impossible to speculate with common sense. Could it be that Chen Pingon came here? Jinghao laughed softly and said, the Changyu Dongtian ruins, the big and small caves are intertwined, just like the orifice of a human body. Although it is incomplete and half-broken, it is still a place that is properly managed and handled, and there is a chance to create a new one. Ascension Fengshui treasure land, but for me in Qinggong Mountain, it is the icing on the cake. Yes, of course it is the best. You and Gao Geng, whoever will be the first to become an immortal in the future, and the matter of proving the way of ascension will be settled. If not, that's because you two don't have enough opportunities, and being a teacher is not enough to tear your heart and lungs. On the contrary, the Shu Cave Master, who seemed calm from the beginning to the end, is heartbroken, and he is about to bite the socket of his back teeth. Chengyu Dongtian is the thing that the pair of Taoist couples have waited for many years and are determined to obtain. Whether a pair of Taoist couples can ascend to the ascension, after all, it is a long-term plan that has completed its merits in one battle. In the end, a female ghost popped out, and she also claimed to be the ghost of Baidi City. Shu Nanyuan is about to grit her teeth and laugh as a teacher lost a big tooth, happy and happy. At the very beginning, there was a private fight for the Changyu Cave, at Lixiazu on its own territory, and Jingdan, a ghost and sword fairy, competed for this opportunity, and Jinghao didn't fear her at all. The one who really needs Jinghao's careful planning is Tianyu Dongshan's vigorous Shu Nanyuan, a new ascension who has accumulated external skills through hiding and hiding. In the territory of one continent, they are neighbors to each other, and there are few people who are in the right direction. Nietsuea also didn't like that Tianyu cave, especially the Taoist companion of Shu Nanyuan. As a teacher, I went to meet the young and promising sovereign Gao. Jinghao thought for a moment, then made a decision to hide her body and let the direct disciple beside her stay where she was, while Lao Feixing quietly entered the underground cave of Chuanjiao Mountain alone. After all, it's not in Luoba Mountain, especially without the wine table, let alone the persuasion of the boy in Tsingyi. Jinghao's momentum is like two different people. Previously, the old Feixing who was the leader of Izhou Mountain had a pleasant face and kind eyes, like a fledgling chi practitioner in the lower 5 realms. Now in this Fuyao Island, it can be said that it is like entering the land of no one, stepping back to the private house by the underground river, looking up at the water pavilion with bamboo curtains on 3 sides. With her hands behind her back, Jinghao squinted her eyes and smiled, "Fellow Daoist, I meet you no matter where I go. Is it because you are sincerely making trouble for me, or do you feel sorry that you have won a Changyu cave, and you want to come to the door to apologize?" Gao Yi saw the old monk outside through the bamboo curtain, and his heart tightened. Probably this is called guilty conscience. With Jingdan guarding the way, Gao Yi didn't think it was a bit hot to take away the love of the Dongtian ruins from the hands of the 2 Ascension realms. Now that Jingdan has completely divorced him, and even said the hurtful words that kowtow at the gate of Baidi City is useless, Gao Yi felt like a pauper who is not good at drinking, and suddenly drank a drink. Gulp of spirits, spit it out, reluctant to swallow it, worrying about scalding your throat and burning your stomach. Jingdan frowned and said, "If you think it's an eyesore, stay away." Jinghao sneered and said, "This place is the private residence of my disciples and grandchildren. Fellow Taoists do not do things properly, but their words are very funny." Gao Yi was extremely embarrassed, and carefully glanced at Jingdan, and the gauze maid with a calm expression who just continued to cook the wine. Jingdan said indifferently, "Chen Shanzhu and Laiyuan Academy invited me to rest here for a while." Jinghao frowned and asked, "Which one is Lord Qin?" Jingdan asked back, "Which Laiyuan Academy does fellow Daoist Jing not ask?" Gao Yi became more and more nervous. If such words are not speculative, if the needle point is pointed at the wheat on, he is not a human being inside and out. Jinghao tucked her hands in her sleeves, silently making a formula for a moment. Her expression suddenly changed, and she said with a hearty smile, "So it's a friend of a friend, it's a coincidence, isn't it? Let's talk about it. This place is not worth a lot of money, don't think it's shabby, that is, even if it is given to Jing. Fellow Daoist and Sovereign Gao have settled down. You are the stalker of Baidi City. The real backer of my Qinggong Mountain is Xing Zhezhong's master. A sword fairy named Jingdan, Gao Yi, the fledgling young suzerain, his sect doesn't have long legs, and he can't get out of Lixiazu. An unknown person. Luck is a thing, gold is gold, but it is a dumpling for the poor family during the New Year's festival, which can't be eaten as 3 meals a day. I really don't believe that Jing Juzhong would protect a high suzerain who has no relatives and no reason. Jing Juzhong likes the ghost fairy Jing Dan. It's not surprising that he likes Gao Jianxian. Jing Hao, wrote the name upside down. Of course he was very afraid of that young hermit official surnamed Qin. But to be honest, in the desolate mountain, Jing Hao is even more afraid of the little boy in Tsing Yi who can call the real master of Qinggong Mountain, Chen Xianjun, brothers and sisters. I was really tired from the few meals at Luopa Mountain. For some reason, at the table, Chen Lingjun would always toast his own wine whenever he had the opportunity, and say a few nice things along the way to the Bang Chinjuliu. And the Dragon Slayer looked at Jing Hao's performance with a smile. It was really wrong for Jing Hao to drink or not to drink, and he didn't know whether to toast or punish him. In that unfathomable Luopa Mountain, it really doesn't matter whether you are in the Ascension state or not in the Ascension state. Jing Dan, Shu Nanyuan, and even the upper and lower sects of Qinggong Mountain felt that his trip was to recruit soldiers and buy horses, and contact some old friends from other continents. There is no reason to say that the mute eats coptis. Just when Jing Hao was still wondering if Jing Dan, please, was her grand gesture, an extremely familiar warm voice sounded behind her. Daoist Jing, we haven't seen each other for a few days, and we meet again. Jing Hao hurriedly turned around to salute, and said with a smile, I have seen Master Qin Shan, Immortal Ning Jian, Chao. Sovereign Master. Originally, he wanted to call the junior Chao Gun by his first name, but Jing Hao changed his words when the words came to his lips. After all, that kid was standing next to Chen Pingan and Ning Yao, to be precise, he was in the middle of them. Then Jing Hao immediately knew it. Such an arrangement was done on purpose. The young hermit was clearly a family member of her family who was helping the summer palace, and came to persuade him to drink for Jing Hao. On the top of the ancestral mountain of the Fangzuan sect where Chao Gun lives, there is a gushy cliff with the word, bending the sky, engraved on it, which is one of the few authentic works of the most proud man in the world. The founder of the mountain, with the Taoist name Chongqing, opened a study here, also named Chongqing. After that, the suzerains of all dynasties studied here and practiced Taoism. The hereditary title of nobility is the only honor in the history of Harantianxia. The first patriarch who originated from the Fang Cun sect, once followed Li Xing to the outer space, and together with the group of monks who ascended to the sky, chased down the remnants of the gods in the vast and boundless realm of Taishu. And this, Chongqing, Taoist who rose to the sky after 100 years of Taoism, fell into the sky. Before he died, he had a last wish, saying that he hoped that the disciples of the sect would inherit his Taoist name. One day, when someone from the Fang Cun sect is able to unite the 14 realms of Taoism and achieve true immortality, this precious Taoist name will be returned to Harantianxia. Li Xing personally agreed to this matter. Since it is a matter appointed by the Sage of Rites, for thousands of years, a vast number of Qi practitioners in the world, no matter how much they covet the longevity Taoist name, they can only stare blankly, not daring to have any attempt or act of arrogance. And the previous suzerain of Fang Cun sect is a person who has ascended to the realm of ascension, and his attainments in refining things have reached the pinnacle. His reputation, character, and virtue on Lixiazu Mountain are indeed comparable to Jing Hao, who is the leader of Izhou Immortal Master, slightly quite a few points. After all, Jing Hao is the leader of Izhou Immortal Master, and he is very well informed about the gossip. He knows that Fang Kunzong is going to establish the next sect in Fuyazu, which seems to be called Zijizong. Indeed, as rumored outside, Chao Gun will be the acting suzerain. When one reaches the Jade Royal realm, the word generation will be removed. Chao Gun performed the Daoist ceremony and said with a smile, Young Chao Gun, I have seen old immortal Master Jing. Jing Hao laughed heartily and said, Sect Master Chow, you don't need to be too polite. In the future, if you have something to do with your next sect on Fuyao Island, please let me know. Say hello to Gao Geng, my apprentice will soon be the national teacher of the Jinpu dynasty. Maybe Gao Geng can't help much, it's a big help, but it's sure to help. Ning Yao looked towards the water pavilion inside the bamboo curtain. A certain young swordsman who once asked Chen Pingon face to face whether he was nervous or not, felt like a light on his back for a moment. The ugly maid whom Jing Dan called the Huansha maid held a wine cup in both hands and invited with a smile, a survivor of the subjugated state in ancient times, Shuriguang, a lonely ghost, met Ning Jianxian. Many years ago, I once went to the inverted mountain with Mr. Fan, and I was fortunate enough to visit Ning Mansion. Although I failed to buy the piece of Zhanlong Cliff to treat my heart disease, Mr. Fan stayed in your mansion for several months. Climb to the top of the city and wait until you have seen the real sky high and earth wide. Unknowingly, the heart disease healed itself. Ning Yao looked soft, nodded, stretched out his hand to lift the bamboo curtain, stepped into the waterside pavilion, took the wine cup from the woman who had cast a blind eye, thanked him and said, Susie has something to say, my heart is at ease. It's my hometown. Chen Ping walked along the river with Jing Hao, and asked a question seemingly casually, your Daoist Jing and Cave Master Shu have been neighbors for many years, what kind of person do you think he is? Jing Hao smiled and said, Master Chen Shan's question seems to be too general. Chen Pingon nodded and said, then narrow the scope and only look at the Cave Master Shu from the perspective of Jing Hao. Jing Hao thought for a moment, carefully selected her words, and said, personally, I don't like this new ascension from the same continent. Chen Ping raised his hands, tapped his fingers, and was silent for a moment, then asked, is it because he could ascend earlier, but he proved his ascension after the war? Jing Hao smiled and said nothing. This is the answer. I don't know who gave the first evaluation. Yeshio is like a dog, and a genealogy is like a snake. Later, a more harsh statement was derived. Wild repairs are like domestic dogs, and genealogy is like wild dogs. There are many Yamazawa wild men who like to bark when they see people. A real wild dog can bite to death just by opening its mouth. Jing Hao said some very sincere words, so this time I competed with Tianyu Dongtian for the opportunity that was under the noses of both parties. While I'm trying to tear my skin apart with Tianyu Dongtian, and am deliberately arranging those troops in order to make them so powerful. In fact, I'm ready to withdraw at any time. The best plan is to make peace with Shu Nanyuan and negotiate a share. My side only accounts for 20 to 30%, that's enough. I have to fight. It's the realm of Ascension Realm, the nominal number 1 immortal master in Lixiazu, and the dual identity of the master of Qinggong Mountain, which forces me to fight. Indisputable, I really don't want to fight with Shu Nanyuan and Tianyu Dongtian. Suddenly, take a step back and say, in my Qinggong Mountain, there are only a few hard-to-achieve disciples like Nietzue and Gao Geng, but that couple has a good son who is one of the 10 young candidates in the world. Shu Nanyuan, the owner of Tianyu Cave, has the Taoist named Jiao Ming. And there are many self-titles, Zhuangxi, Hanren, and Sui. Next, Chen Pingon asked another question that was far from the topic, Dragon Pavilion in Zhongtu. Are you familiar with Daoist Jing? Jing Hao couldn't keep up with Qin Shan's train of thought, so she thought carefully for a while before saying, not familiar, I only had face-to-face friendship with the two suzerains, but I drank wine at the same table a few times with the contemporary master. Qingshan Mountain. However, I met Situ Xianjun with the Taoist name Longbeard at the foot of Lixiazu Mountain. Both of us hid our identities back then. Hilarious, this person is good, his style of conversation, Taoism, and demeanor are all first class. It's a pity that Situ Mengjing doesn't have the will to be the suzerain, otherwise Delonqiu will be the master of the family, and I believe he can take a big step forward. Chen Pingan nodded and said, business is booming. Jinghao was very suspicious. She was afraid that this Lord Qin Shan would feign a shot and spread a false imperial decree, and it would be difficult for him to check with that Qin Xianjun. Fortunately, Chen Pingan didn't continue to say anything to scare people, but just said that Gao Gong was in the Tiefu Jiangshui mansion, and he married two brothers with different surnames as Jin Ranqi, and they got along very well. Jinghao suddenly glanced at Chen Pingan. Chen Ping turned a blind eye on purpose. Examine me. To judge my level of realm, depth of Dao power. Jinghao really had this intention. Seeing Master Chen's unaware posture, he was not sure about the true cultivation of the sword fairy around him for a while. It turned out that when Jinghao and Chen Pingan were walking along the river, a fast-moving Liuxia boat appeared at the Xianjia ferry closest to the Chuanzhou mountain boundary. On the ferry, two famous local monks in Fuyao Island stood side by side, Lu Wei and Yang Qinggu. This made the local monks in Fuyazhou who still chose to stay outside and wait to watch the fun secretly happy. As the dragon crossing the river, Jinghao was destined to fail. In addition, those who came here from other continents to fish in troubled waters were also cautious and did not rush back to the mountains. They also felt that if there was no fight in Chuanzhou Mountain, it would be unreasonable. These great monks on the top of the mountain, who can't see the end of the dragon, seem to have made an appointment. They either don't show themselves in front of people, or they like to appear in groups when they show up. Fuyazhou used to be a mountaintop pattern where the north and the south faced each other. Lu Yu from Tianyao Township in the north and Yang Qinggu, a ghost cultivator in the back mountain in the south, were both in the Ascension realm. Yang Qinggu, the originator of House Han, has a bumpy way of cultivating Taoism, coupled with an upright personality, making enemies on all sides, and a sect, sheltering many ghost cultivators and heroic spirits. Once plotted by the enemies, Yang Qinggu went on a killing spree, killing more than 100 genealogy monks, and finally Yaxing came to Fuyazhou and forcibly detained him in the Gongda forest of Zhongtu Confucian Temple. Even though the battle in Fuyao continent was horrific and the entire continent fell to pieces, this Ascension Realm ghost immortal still couldn't leave his meritorious deeds. Lin Half-Step. The person in charge of the affairs is Ghost Xiu, the Vice Mountain Master. A back mountain at the beginning of Zone was personally breached by the throne monster Beiying, and there were no monks in the genealogy. Almost all the monks of the upper 5 realms and the earth immortals died in battle. The reason for almost is because only one is responsible for protecting them. The Master's Golden Core Ghost, with a group of young direct disciples, evacuated together. There are less than 10 people in total. There is not even a guardian of Yupu and Yuanying. At the last Ancestral Hall discussion in House Han that year, there were some objections to it at first, and a relatively young Yupujing was going to be enshrined to protect those younger monks from retreating from House Han. The deputy mountain chief stood up to everyone's arguments, and without saying too much, he persuaded the entire Patriarch Hall with just one sentence. When our mountain master created the mountain, he was also a golden core. In today's eye-catching Liuxia boat, apart from Lu Wei and Yang Qinggu, the rivals of the past, there are also a few unfamiliar faces on board. Judging from their positions, they don't look like juniors or entourages. It is true that Lu Wei had official duties in the Confucian Temple, but this time he went back to Lixiazu for retreat at the Xiazong, and once he left the customs, he returned to the Ascension Realm. It happened that Yang Qinggu escaped from Gongda Forest, but he still needed to go to the wild world, so he made an appointment to take the time to return to his hometown Fuyazhou together. The monks on the same boat, and Beta Shenggu Kan, he is the first enshrinement of the new House Han. The personal maid Gu Lingyu. There is also a female fairy who is about to land the entire Jinsui city near Chuanzhou Mountain in Fuyazhou, Xingqingjia. Tianyao Township, Suzerain Lu Huai. He was a vulture-like boy with a cold temperament, his eyes were heavy, and he was staring down with his palms outstretched. Lu Hui was rescued by Qi Tingji on the battlefield back then. This old Feisheng, who had returned to his original appearance but could not hide his old age, had just fallen by one level. The other side it's over the city wall. The lower sect of Tianyao Township was built in Lixiazu, and has a white porcelain cave that ranks among the 72 small caves. Lu Yu spent many years recuperating there, and when he left the customs for the first time, he went to the Zhongta Confucian Temple to participate in the discussion, and it was still in the fairyland. Fuyao continent is a well-recognized small continent that is only slightly larger than Aquarius continent. Before Lu Yu was born and successfully proved his way and ascended, Fuyao continent's status in the Haoran world was no better than Aquarius continent. Travel, go out short. If it weren't for the appearance of Lu Wei, the entire Fuyao continent would not have ascended for nearly 5,000 years. Therefore, Lu Xian's successful ascension was hailed as a resolve by heaven, by various continents and mountains. At that time, he participated in the discussion of the Confucian Temple and appeared in Yuanyangzu. Lu Hui appeared together with the two immortals Qin Zhao and Song Qian in Lixiazu. Lu Hui frowned and said, "There are a few places in the Fengshui cave that are so weird that you can't see them through." During the retreat period, thanks to the heavy rain, Lu Hui has now returned to ascension, so it stands to reason that he shouldn't be unable to see through the scene inside Chuanzhou Mountain. The majestic young Qingu said indifferently, "Whether it's weird or magical, you'll know as soon as you go. I'd like to see if Jinghao, a countryman from outside, can take this vein of mine away from me." Lu Hui smiled and said, "Jinghao is not a stunned young man. This guy is notorious for planning before he can act, and he just showed up now. He probably already knows where Quan Jiaoshan really belongs." Young Qingu turned his head, changed his expression, and said with a smile, "Gu Xiaoyu, what do you say? Do you want me to drive some obtrusive things out of the mountain?" Gu Kan smiled and said, "Those who don't know are not guilty. Let the younger generation release the news first. If there are ghosts who dare to hide their evil intentions, please stop them as soon as possible and teach them a lesson." Young Qingu, who never underestimated others, praised, "Gu Xiaoyu is mature and prudent, and he really has the demeanor of a suzerain." In Fengshui Cave, there are private houses on both sides of the underground river, and the lights are brightly lit all day long, making it difficult to distinguish day from night. The timid ones stayed outside, watching from a distance. There were also bold ones who rushed back to their own territory one after another. Fortunately, they were not caught by thieves. Those poor fellows who were in the middle of the before didn't have the mind to fight with each other at this moment. Since they were all driven out of the Fengshui cave by the old sword fairy in the Ascension realm, and they are all grandsons, then no one should pretend to be a master. Fuyazu Mountain's fierce and martial style is probably only inferior to that of Beiju Luzhou. On the riverside road, a group of people who appeared here out of thin air walked against the current. Young Qingu and Gu Kan walked side by side. Lu Hui, who lowered his head and thought about things, was invisible behind them, discussing with Zheng Qingjia about the specific matters of Jinsui City's landing and taking root. There were a few, Leng Taoqing, who were just fledgling and went down the mountain to practice, and they didn't take care of their eyes and mouth. After all, young Qingu has been detained by the Confucian Temple for many years, and this Ascension Realm ghost immortal has never liked to show his face. What's more, it's the norm for a world-renowned Ascension Realm to hear about it and never see it. Young Qingu frowned, but he hadn't returned to Fuyazu for more than 100 years, and the foot of the mountain was like this. Gu Kan, who looked normal, just moved sideways, intentionally or unintentionally moved 2 steps, just to give way to Lu Hui who was behind him. Lu Wei just raised his head. The onlookers on both sides of the mansion who had just walked out of the mansion suddenly scattered, and some of them forgot to close the door, and went back home directly over the wall. One side goes down the current, the other side goes up the current, just facing each other across the bank. Jing Qingjia and Gu Lingjun held their hands together at the same time, and gave a blessing to the green shirt guest on the other side. Chen Pingan smiled and cupped his fists in return. Lu Wei still had a naturally sinister look, but he still reminded young Qingu with his heart. The one opposite is the last hermit official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi, the most famous young man among several jiazi in the world. As for Jinghao in Qinggong Mountain, Lu Wei didn't even bother to introduce it, and of course there was no need to introduce it. Jinghao smiled and said, "You can congratulate Yu Dao Yu Lu for returning to the top. Congratulations for Yu Dao Yu Yang being free again. As long as he is not in Luopa Mountain, Jing Lao's hen is worthy of Qin Lingjun's top ranking in that passerby collection." Young Qingu sarcastically said, "Lu Wei, is it because I am dazzled? Why did I see such a big tortoise shell? Why did I float here from Lixiaozu across the sea? Is this where the war is still going on and came to help us in Fuyazu?" Lu Xian's next clan was established in Lixiaozu after all, and he still wanted to give Jinghao a bit of a favor, so he didn't agree. Jinghao laughed and said, "Why would a tortoise with a shrunken head talk about a tortoise's shell?" Young Qingu, who was exposed to the most heartbreaking part of the short story, would strike at the slightest disagreement. Jinghao sneered, "Fellow monks, practice your hands, I'm afraid you'll be an egg." Chen Pingan reached out and patted the arm of fellow Daoist Jing beside him, looked at the burly man, and said in his heart, "Hao Su, the criminal officer who can be regarded as half a local monk in Fuyazu, let me tell Master Yang Shan that he is very grateful to you back then. Said a few words of righteousness." Young Qingu was stunned for a moment, and said, "Don't say polite words that are empty-headed. I don't like to hear them. I can't pretend to be polite and greetings when I am too young. Hao Su, the criminal officer, would like to convey a few words. If I really want to thank you, please come up with something real. I am now rebuilding the mountain gate in the back mountain, and a lot of waste is waiting to be done. In addition, my army is about to be disbanded. The mountaintop wants to restore its pre-war heyday. Momentum is difficult. In the next 100 years, or even 200 to 300 years, there may be a lack of a real master who can handle things sitting on the top of the mountain. I heard that he went to Baiyujing in Qingming Tianxia, so let him find a chance, go back to Haoran Tianxia, on the golden and jade genealogy of the Patriarch Hall, write the name or not, it is up to him, but he had to say a few harsh words. For 300 years, the back mountain was covered by his arrogance. Chen Ping agreed first, remembered something, and said with a smile, "Mr. Jing thinks highly of House Han." According to legend, Jing Juzhong once appeared in Fuyazu. One person even personally found the group of young ghost cultivators who had returned to the Fuyazu Zongmen ruins. The back mountain boundary, which has been reduced to ruins, is waiting for them. After they met, they said, "Since a crowd of people is not as good as ghosts in the world, so what if there are more ghosts in the back mountain?" Young Qingu said bluntly, "Now the whole world is afraid of Mr. Zhang. Even though I am a ghost, I am also afraid of him." One thing, young Qingu is very self-aware. Jing Juzhong appreciates those young disciples from House Han, but not necessarily young Qingu, who has been imprisoned in the Gongda forest for many years. Young Qingu thought for a while, and asked a question that he had been curious about for a long time, "Chen Pingan, what state are you in now?" In fact, young Qingu has a good impression of this young sword fairy who has heard of it in the Gongda forest, but this ascension realm has always been straightforward in his words and actions. Chen Pingan couldn't help laughing, and just cupped his fists towards the opposite bank. The relationship is not that familiar. Chen Ping asked Gu Kan with his heart, "Have you met Lu Yuzhou?" Gu Kan replied with a smile, "It's settled, he will be the deputy suzerain. Then Jing Qingjia will be in charge of the money, and Huangli Island Zhongsu will be in charge of the law. I have seen that Eugene, and I am willing to be the chief priest." Chen Pingan nodded. With this kind of rudimentary form of the sect, the spirit is really not small. Jinghao originally felt a little resentful towards Chen Shan's dissuading action of clapping his arms. Since we are not in Luoba Mountain, Chen Daoyu stretched his hand too long. Chen Pingan seemed to have guessed the thoughts of old immortal Jing, and said with a smile from his heart, "When you go out, you can make money with kindness." Fellow Daoist Jing doesn't think I'm troublesome, does he? Jinghao stroked her beard with a smile and said, "You Daoist Chen thought too much, and said something very strange." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "That's good. It's better to think more than to make mistakes." Jinghao twirled her beard with 2 fingers, narrowed her eyes for a moment, endless. "Why, when you are used to being a host, you like to be a teacher everywhere, in and out of the mountains?" Regarding Chen Pingan's true state, he had previously climbed the main road of Luopa Mountain with Chen Xianjun, the real master of Qinggong Mountain, but Chen Qinglu had actually leaked the secret for Jinghao. Chen Xianjun would never lie to him about Jinghao. Such a young hermit official is now just a hidden secret, nascent soul realm. The reasoning makes sense. The sword is open to support the Moon Mountain, and the words are engraved on the top of the city, so there is no price. I heard that Chen Pingan used to travel in the rivers and lakes and liked to suppress the situation the most, but now it doesn't help. Instead, he needs to bluff and pretend that he is a sword fairy. Just thinking about it this way, Jinghao felt sorry for him, always felt that a young man who had made great contributions to Yuharan should not be so downcast. It seems that let alone pressing down his arm before, the young man just yelled to stop himself, pretending to be a tiger. It was nothing. Jinghao sighed, stretched out her hand, and patted the green-clothed arm beside her with gentle movements, then turned her head to comfort this Qin Shanju, who is different from the past, on the way of cultivation. Fellow Taoist Mo be discouraged. Chen Ping smiled and nodded. It seems that the morning wine between Immortal Jing and Chen Lingjun was not in vain. "I'll go back first." A woman's voice sounded beside him, separated by Chen Daoyu. Chen Pingan smiled softly, "Okay." Jinghao leaned forward slightly, and saw the woman's face clearly. Chen Pingan stopped, and helped to introduce, Qinggong Mountain, Lixiazu, Senior Jinghao, whose Taoist name is Qinggong Taibao, took the initiative to visit our Luopa Mountain for a long time not long ago. She turned around and clasped her fists and said, "Ascension to Ningyao, I met Senior Jing." Jinghao's heart kept pounding. She swallowed, and hurriedly returned the gift. The old monk took the opportunity to calm down, and said softly, "Don't dare to call yourself a senior on Ning Jiangxian's side." As Ning Yao is the #1 person in the colorful world, if she is only a sword cultivator at the ascension level, Jinghao believes that she should never be so surreptitious, and let her old ascendant be unaware. So, Immortal Jing understood again. But this time, he didn't guess the wrong answer. A long rainbow of sword energy with a blurred avenue went straight into the sky, stretched out a seemingly endless beam of bright light on the territory of Fuyazu, broke through the sky, and went straight to another world without opening the door. Jinghao witnessed this magnificent scene at a close distance. The old man couldn't help but feel swayed. She is really beautiful like a jade sword, like a rainbow. Song Pin and his disciple Nietsuea are far inferior to Ning Yao. Chen Pingan retracted his gaze earlier, and said with a smile in his heart, "Fellow Daoist Jing, to be honest, I am not in the nascent soul realm, but now I am a fairy." Jinghao understood again, nodded and said in a deep voice, "I understand, Chen Dao, you must be a great sword immortal. Even if you, Chen Pingan, now say that you are in the 14th realm, I will nod. Otherwise, it will be considered that I, Jing, have spent nearly 3,000 years of monastic life in vain. Anyway, you and Ning Yao are Taoist couples. Since they are a family, there is no need to distinguish the realms so clearly. The realms of the two of you, one is the 14th realm, the other is the nascent soul realm. Even, aren't you both in the immortal realm? Jing Hao couldn't help but sigh in her heart. It's nice to be young, to eat soft food, and not to be talked about by outsiders. Just in an instant, Jing Hao's heartstrings were tense. Something was wrong. How did Chen Pingon know that he knew that he was in the nascent soul realm? Chen Ping smiled and cupped his hands and said, "The matter of realm can't be evened out. Farewell." Before Jing Hao came back to his senses, the next moment, wearing a green shirt, his body was also transformed into nothingness. It was like thunder, and it was thousands of miles away in a blink of an eye. Sword of Coming Chapter 11-14. There is a bright moon on the sea. The word Xing is really wonderful and has an endless aftertaste. Even if it is a sword fairy who uses the method of imagining, no matter how fast the sword is, it is definitely not as good as the Sanshan talisman that crosses continents casually, and it is also not as good as that night sailing ship. A misty Dharma figure flitted across thousands of islands in the sea. Above the sea, the majestic sword energy broke through countless seas of clouds, and Qingying opened up extremely long roads in the clouds. Occasionally, a waterborne looked up in horror, only to see the cyan sword light flashing away, flickering on and off, and after a while, there was a series of deafening thunder, resounding in the lonely sea and sky. Occasionally, the sword fairy lowered Eugene's figure, and his sword energy cut through the waves. He passed a certain island hanging over seas, and the emerald green in the mountains leaned to one side, rustling. Passing through an unknown fairy house on the sea, there are row upon row of gorgeous buildings and bright lights. The cyan figure that was about to hit the island in a straight line was divided into dozens of sword lights in an instant, high and low, just bypassing the ancestral mountain. The radiant sword light, which was separated from the mountain, dragged out dazzling trails in the air, radiant with brilliance, and recondensed into a line on the sea more than 100 miles away. During the interval between breath adjustment and breathing, the light of the sword slowed down, and Chen Pingon showed his figure, drawing a half-arc. His green shirt floated on the sea, striding on the waves, his sleeves fluttering, full of sea breeze. Wanting to meet a ferryboat in the vast sea, or a qi refiner who travels far away with the wind, is tantamount to finding a needle in a haystack. Tonight, Chen Pingon really met one. This man was driving a talisman boat, slowly following a magical cloud shining under the moon, and the young monk threw his pole into the sea of clouds. Chen Pingon stopped at the edge of the sea of colorful clouds. The leisurely young fishing man raised his eyes and asked in the elegant words of Nan Pasuajo, "Who is it?" Chen Pingon smiled in the most mellow and authentic Najo dialect, "The land who went out to sea to visit the gods." The young man twisted his wrist, pulled out the rod and scattered the bait. Ripples burst into the sea of colorful clouds, pulled back the fishing line, and rubbed a piece of secret again. Put the bait on the hook, throw the rod once, and the wind roars. The golden fishing line, which is so tiny and undetectable, is more than 100 feet long. The young man smiled, "A fellow." Chen Pingon nodded and said, "The master of this way is not weaker than others." The young man couldn't help laughing, and didn't speak a word, while the suspicious-looking strange man in blue shirt just stood there, his figure fluttering with the clouds, and he looked at it patiently for half an hour. The young man had no choice but to say, "I often sit for tens of years, and I may not be able to catch a fish once. If you wait for me to catch a colorful winged crested fish before leaving, I'm afraid you will be disappointed." Chen Ping raised his chin and asked, "Show me the fish basket?" A bamboo fish basket was tied to the bow, which disappeared into the clouds. The rank is not bad, it is clearly a Dragon King basket on the mountain. The young man smiled and said, looking at no one around, "Are you sure that I don't have a Taoist protector, that you're bullying me, that I'm not of a high level, and that you plan to kill people and rob me?" Chen Pingon smiled and said, fellow Taoist, is the water from South Pasuo continent. The young man with an ancient jade seal hanging from his waist frowned and said nothing. Did this person come prepared? Want both the Dragon King basket and this ancestral token? Today's Kai Yi Xiao has a lot of appetite. It couldn't be because I bumped into a wild remnant hiding in the sea, right? Very good, small fish don't eat big fish, let me weigh this person's weight. Long Qing, the originator of the Shui, who is also the young master, once obtained an ancient stone box protected by A and Man in Shui. There were 5 seals in the box. Yu Confucian Temple. Long Qing meticulously refined the jade seal on that side was 300 years old, and it has become the treasure of the. At this moment, it is hanging on the waist of the young monk. The young man put away his fishing rod, stood up, and reported his identity, the Shui Caiji Prefecture, Lu Xiang. Please tell me the name of your fellow Taoist, and teach you the Dharma. Chen Ping waved his hand, indicating that he had no intention of discussing Taoism, and said with a smile, I am very familiar with Yuan Qingshu. The young man asked with a smile, does Uncle Yuan know you well? Chen Pingon nodded and said, familiar too. Lu Xiang narrowed his eyes, and said, why don't you be more straightforward and say that there is a no-thing sign above your shop, with the phrase this place should know that I, Yuan Qingshu, is a sword fairy. I never thought that the guy was really shameless, so he nodded and said, fellow Taoist, help me say what I wanted to say. Luckily Lu Xiang is not weak in raising energy, otherwise I would have yelled at him. I was fishing in the South China Sea, which is far away from Aquarius continent, and when I met a passerby, he said that he was the last hidden official of the Great Wall of Sword Qi. Did you think that Shan Zaixiu was stupid because of money, or did you think I, Lu Xiang, were stupid? Chen Pingon said, Li Kai once returned a broken Yangjian gourd to the Shui. Lu Xiang was puzzled, how did this guy know such a secret inside story? Duh. Chen Pingon said, Yuan Zhenxian is addicted to wine. He once joked with Gao Kue at the top of the city that he used raised sword gourds to store wine, and used the name of a big demon to hide the current wine and vegetables. The taste is endless, the most delicious. Lu Xiang asked, who are you? Damn, if you are really that young hermit official, I will take your surname. In short, Lu Xiang just didn't believe that the person in green shirt in front of him happened to be the Qin Zhenxian who he was thinking about. There was no such a coincidence in the world. Besides, Li Kai and other sword celestials who have been visiting this Lu Xiang, through various mountain rumors and gossip, verified the statement of some intercontinental ferry stewards and captains that the young hermit official was indeed vigorous and resolute. The most important thing is that they all swear that the young sword fairy is not ordinary handsome, and outsiders can recognize his unusualness at a glance. Lu Xiang took a closer look. The man in front of him, with a hosta on his head, a green shirt, long gown and cloth shoes, in terms of appearance, can only be regarded as Zhou Zheng, in terms of demeanor, silly. He stood there and watched himself fishing for half an hour. It must not be Chen Pingon. Chen Pingon smiled and said, friends of Taoism are vulgar, don't you respect your appearance? Lu Xiang held back for a long time, and asked tentatively, fellow Taoist, did you use the immortal family disguise technique? Chen Pingon was speechless for a moment. If it's not a sword repair, it's just difficult to talk about. After all, Lu Xiang was lucky and wanted to chat a few words, but saw the man in the blue shirt wave his sleeves, and in an instant, a sea of colorful clouds surged violently, and several fishes jumped out of the clouds by themselves and jumped into the talisman boat. The next moment, the green shirt was gone, and Lu Xiang lingered in his ear. Taoist friends returned home, just said that they caught it by themselves, so there is no need to go to the Nanhai fish market to buy it. Lu Xiang was in a daze. Although he was still unable to determine the identity of the other party, they were people of the same path, so they must be right. Then at the border between the South China Sea and the East China Sea, Chen Pingan suddenly stopped and looked down at a bright moon in the sea. There was an old Taoist priest in purple clothes with a gourd on his back, slowly rising from the bright moon. It was a phantom that Yu Xian used supernatural powers to appear in the world. Chen Ping slapped the boss. The younger generation has met Yu Laoren. Yu Xian returned the salute with a smile. You don't need to be too polite, Daoish Qin. Chen Ping asked with a smile, are you worried that the younger generation will mislead the younger generation? The general stretched out his hand to hold the handle of the knife, and reminded, it is a felony to trespass on the water palace. The old man looked away, bored, yawned, and said with a smile, I have to suppress the realm, so as not to scare you to death. It is very hard. Saber God General took a step forward. You're still playing tricks. If you don't report your name, don't blame Ben General for taking you to the water prison. The old man in green shirt said, okay, I have nothing to talk to you guys. Let that Wang Zhu get out and meet the old man. The general is going to activate the water mansion formation, and mobilize one of the water veins to smash at this old fellow who speaks out loud. As a result, the high-ranking general was horrified to find that the water vein belonging to one of the water mansion formations was completely out of control. The old man said to himself, that's right, how dare she show up in front of me? A torrential rain, the rain that splits into the four seas, is not uncommon. The little girl's film luck is good, let her take the first step, and get away with it. Indeed, in terms of luck, compared with this evil dragon who survived the catastrophe, how many Li Yihis are different? Dominant. So she dared not see me even more. A priestess from the etiquette department hurried over with a respectful expression, but she hesitated to speak. How to address each other is really difficult. The one who came was Qin Qinglu, the dragon slayer. The old man said, hey, finally there is someone who is not blind. The chief of the etiquette department bestowed a blessing, I have seen Chen Xianjun. Qin Qinglu nodded, and said with a smile, Wang Zhu has made up his mind not to go out to entertain guests. The female officer looked embarrassed. Just now, King Zhu of Water made a decree, roughly meaning to thank guests behind closed doors today. Chen Qinglu sneered, I'm scared out of my wits. Some Shuifu generals who are determined to be the master and humiliate their ministers, even if they have already guessed the identity of the old man in green clothes, they still want to fight him. Chen Qinglu moved forward, together with the female official of the Department of Rituals. All the generals and soldiers of the Water Palace couldn't help themselves, no matter how they struggled, they still had to kneel on the ground. As if the way of heaven is slowly pressing down on the top, they can't help but stand still. Chen Qinglu took every step. In a large hall of the Water Mansion, the Water King Zhu, who was originally sitting on the dragon chair, had a distorted face, pale and colorless, and his hands that were tightly covering the handle of the chair began to tremble. When Chen Qinglu entered the Water Mansion and got closer and closer to the main hall, Wang Zhu, who had reached the 14th realm, still didn't even dare to think of leaving the dragon chair. When Chen Qinglu was strolling in the courtyard, he came to the threshold of the main hall. Inside the main hall, Zhu, the king of the 14th realm, no longer has a human form, but a giant snow-white dragon is entrenched. The gigantic body of a real dragon, even though it tried its best to curl up, still occupied half of the wide and deep hall. Chen Qinglu still had his hands behind his back, his expression was as usual, but there was a bit more irony in his eyes. He raised one foot, stepped on the threshold, and said, slightly stronger than before, just hiding, not running. The snow-white dragon slowly raised its head to a height of more than 10 feet. It was just such a small movement, which seemed to consume all its energy and energy. It's staring at that butcher. Blood feud, but that's all. Chen Qinglu smiled and said, aren't you desperate? You're already in the 14th realm, but after seeing me, you find it so difficult for you to even raise your head? After a sliver of hope is shattered, it's probably true despair. Wang Zhu was in a daze, maintaining his true spirit, and said hoarsely, if you kill me, you will also fall. Confucian Temple rules. It is destined to be unable to stop this dragon slayer. Moreover, Wang Zhu would never beg for mercy with the Confucian Temple. Chen Qinglu sneered and said, the world today is different from the past, and there is still a lack of real dragons. After killing one Wang Zhu, there will naturally be a second one to make up for it. Some are busy. In the battle of killing the dragon 3,000 years ago, there were no real dragons in the world. A Lizhu cave was created out of thin air. Chen Qinglu retired and disappeared without a trace. But even if he didn't show up again, for 3,000 years, there is still no dragon species in the world who dares to cross the Thunder Pool. I was just passing by and came here as a guest, but what you said is not pleasant. Chen Qinglu smiled and said, then take this head of yours and try to sharpen the edge of a long sword that has been sharpened for 3,000 years. The pair of golden eyes of this real snow-white dragon showed obvious hesitation, and the two dragon whiskers swayed slowly, rippling with bursts of pure golden light. Chen Qinglu has an unknown Taoist name, Qingzhu. This dragon slayer possessed a more concealed single-word flying sword. But it wasn't like this from the very beginning, but the sword cultivator used battle to nourish the battle, tempered the sword edge, and polished it out bit by bit. Fijian's natal supernatural power is just one word. Cut. Chen Qinglu stretched out his hand to grab it, and the infinite sea water in the boundary of Shuifu dried up in an instant, and finally condensed into a long blue sword. Standing up the long sword, Chen Qinglu put his fingers together, flicked it lightly, the blade vibrated and trembled endlessly. Wang Zhu was already very reluctant to resist the aura that was like the coercion of heaven, but she absolutely refused to kill her, raised her claws, and pressed heavily on the ground of the hole. Chen Qinglu shook his head, you guys are in the new 14th realm, you are so weak that it is ridiculous. Wang Zhu was so suppressed that he lost his real body and regained his human form, bleeding from his 7 orifices, curled up on the dragon chair. Just at this moment, Chen Qinglu was about to step over the threshold and bestow the sword on that poor fellow, when he suddenly stopped and cursed, old man, you likes to be troublesome. It turned out that there was a middle-aged man beside him, who also looked like a Confucian scholar in green shirt. It was Chen Pingon. Chen Qinglu snorted, haven't the contract between you two been terminated? Chen Pingon nodded and smiled, unknowingly, I formed the contract passively, and when I came back to my senses, I took the initiative to terminate the contract. Chen Qinglu squinted at the young mountain master and said, young man, with Ningyao as a Taoist companion, are you still not satisfied? Eating what's in your mouth and thinking about what's in the pot, isn't it good? Chen Pingon didn't know whether to laugh or cry, it was all about what. Want to save her. How to save her? A little nascent soul, who just jumped over the fairyland on the first floor of Yupu, dares to show up here. Chen Qinglu turned around and casually shook the long sword in his hand, aren't we going to talk about the realm apart from the realm? Chen Ping glanced at Wang Zhu who was sitting on the dragon chair in the room. Wang Zhu's face was frosty and he didn't appreciate it. Holding the sword in one hand, Chen Qinglu took a step towards Chen Pingon, and said with a smile, I don't understand, I'm very curious, how can you stop me, just because we are both surnamed Qin? Chen Ping made a bow and said, boldly beg Senior to withdraw his sword. Wang Zhuping was furious for no reason, and screamed, don't beg him. When you were young, you asked for help, when you were young, you asked for help, and now you still ask for help. My Wang Zhu is already in the 14th realm, and the luck of the dragons in the world is condensed in me. Since life and death are conceded, don't you need to meddle in your own business? Chen Ping squinted at the hall, and said angrily, "Shut up, you." Wang Zhu trembled with anger. Chen Qinglu reminded with a smile, "Chen Ping, think it over, today is my enemy, the price is not small, and the sequelae are even greater." Chen Ping's eyes were firm, and he said slowly, "About Wang Zhu, Mr. Qi has something to entrust. I need to be her guardian at least once." At least from the current point of view, Wang Zhu, who left Lizhu Dongtian, did not take any act of arrogance. There is no need to hand over the sword to kill the dragon. Oh. Hong Qingxian nodded with a smile, and revealed his shortcomings. It is indeed an official from the family. He is the secretary who writes books when he gets on the bus, and what is in his body is the secretary. Jia Xing stroked his beard and smiled and said, "Dao is from a friendly family background, so it's no wonder that his speech and behavior are so elegant and natural." Hong Qingxian continued to tell the story of that friend. After becoming Minister of the Ministry of Rites, he had a suggestion with His Majesty the Emperor that it is a good thing for a ruler in charge of a country and a minister who governs a country to be devout and faithful to the Buddha, but he should not blindly flatter the Buddha. If the blood of the common people is exhausted for the altar, the Buddha, if he has a spirit, would not be willing to make offerings. If one loses the treasury, misses the agricultural work, and wastes the people's power to get the blessing, then the blessing will be greater than the blessing that is prayed for. Practicing Buddhism can cultivate the capital of the next life. Confucianism's cultivation of qi and jiping is to solve today's problems. The second monarch changed his course and began to advocate Taoism, and turned to destroy temples and Buddhas. It was still the old man who had just been conferred the title of Crown Prince and Taibao, who openly opposed the emperor's extermination of Buddhism and worship of Taoism. The reason is that it is wrong to say that today is near, and the next life is far away. Then the next life is far away, today is near, just look at the light of today day. It is also wrong not to look at the afterlife in this body. Some people in the ruling and opposition circles said that he was trying to gain fame and reputation, and that he would not be guaranteed at the end of the day. Only a few people think that he is truly mellow. Speaking of this, the old Taoist raised his withered palm and patted the piano bag on the table lightly. From young to old, we are all close friends, but he became an official, a poor Taoist cultivator, and it is inevitable that he will gradually drift away. No more books, times have changed, old places revisiting. The previous years were blown away by the rain and the wind, the old friend's house was overgrown with weeds, the old wood was thin and tough, and the branches were like tendons. There is only one ancient begonia, which is still graceful and graceful, like a peerless beauty who admires herself alone. Old immortal Jia sighed endlessly, and followed up, "I don't know how many times, I have passed out drunk in the shadow of flowers." Cui Qingxian picked up the water bowl and said sadly, "There is no solution." Jia Sheng was not very willing to comment on this matter, so he just picked up the bowl and bumped into Cui Qingxian. At this moment, the young Taoist priest sitting on the bamboo chair suddenly said, "There is a solution." Cui Qingxian turned his head and asked with a smile, "What's the explanation?" Xian Wei replied, "If you want to be powerless, you will resign from office and retire to the mountains and forests." This kind of high morale and integrity, the family members and grandchildren have seen it, and the government and the people have seen it. They all know that there is still something in the world. Scholars read books in this way, so it is right of. It's really helpless, it's hard to change the situation from turbid to clear, and I have to pretend to be false, and join forces with people who don't believe in the same way, but I do my best, mend it in secret, and do a lot of good things that benefit the people and the country, and outsiders scold me as I please. If you scold me, your fame will be ruined once, but you have a clear conscience, so this is also right. Two kinds of things, two people, two hearts, have never failed, and they have really taken root, and will bloom and bear fruit in the hearts of others. They may not be lush, but like that crabapple. Hearing this, the old man thought about it for a moment and sighed, so that's how it is. Taoist Xian Wei smiled and said nothing. Sure enough, I can't discuss the details of Taoism in the teaching with others, and speaking these, general Taoist language, is what I am good at. The last time I made a show for Li Muzhou of the Jingwei Temple, now Xian Wei is afraid when he meets a true Taoist priest. It was still hard to muster up the courage to say a few words. Of course, the main reason is that Taoist Xian Wei is not worried about saying the wrong thing because of the presence of the old Jia, who sits at the gate of the mountain. But do as the Romans do, you still have to treat people with sincerity. Xian Wei wanted to strike while the iron was hot and add a few more words, but he couldn't think of a good way to say it for a while, so he hinted at the master of this way at the table, the great master with his eyes. Old immortal Jia immediately understood, it was his duty to do his duty, and immediately followed up with a few sincere words, the truth is such a big truth. People, of course, can't be vulgar, but they can't be unconventional at all. If you really want to make these empty truths come true, as the Taoist Xian Wei said, it's like sprouting, blossoming and bearing fruit, or letting a sapling grow like a tree. Big and straight, one day it is expected to tower to the sky, and it can shade relatives, neighbors and passers-by. We have to be the lord of the mountain to dismantle the great principles in detail. Xian Wei admired it very much. Probably this means that experts can know if there is one as soon as they make a move, and they are indeed a bit better than themselves. Cui Qingxian put down the white bowl. Since old immortal Jia is willing to treat people with sincerity, it is not good for Pin Dao to continue to use a false identity. Before Wen carefully passed out, he vaguely heard Master Jing say something like old rules, bookkeeping, my brothers get a 20% discount. The guy named Bai Xian often came to hang out in the martial arts field. When he saw this punch, he quickly picked up the purple sand pot and drank wolfberry tea, suppressing his shock. Jing Dafeng was soft-spoken and made several oaths before he was lucky enough to read the Book of Heroes. After closing the book, Jing Dafeng said something to be fair, it is really a book of life and death. Sitting on the bamboo chair under the eaves, Bai Xian looked at the martial arts master whom Jing Dafeng said was weak in body but not weak in spirit. Mature, just wait for yourself to throw a cup for the sake of reason. Brother Wen can be the vanguard general when besieging Pei Qian together. How did Wen Xinqiu know the way here, let alone the matter of being exceptionally listed, in the eyes of Master Zheng, who sees through and doesn't tell the truth? It is considered to be laying on the floor at the gate of hell. In any case, this kid Bai Xian has a weird personality, a bit weird, old-fashioned in speaking and doing things, but besides Master Zheng, he is the second member of the Luobashan genealogy who recognizes him, so we sit in rows together under the eaves on weekdays, warmly if you are careful, you are willing to chat with Bai Xian a few more words. Especially when he learned that Bai Xian was already a hidden sword cultivator at the Dragon Gate level at such a young age, when Xiangxiu was more willing to talk warmly with him, and Jing Dafeng held back his words. Be bad, be happy secretly. The two were on Jilin Peak, and they only knew how to eat and drink all day long. I don't know who made a small report. They filed a complaint with Qin Shanju, and they were driven to Tiaoyu Mountain. They didn't go to the martial arts arena on the other side of Yingyu Peak in Tiaoyu Mountain to help, but in Huaying Peak, Mi Daijian used flying swords to poke the embryos of those cultivators randomly, and Zhong Qian, who was a martial artist with a golden body, was just like that. Arrow target, let those 8 chi refiners mess up smashing technique. The sable-hat girl, who seemed to be the top spot and the chief master, was more satisfied. It was a mess, just look at the excitement. But they don't go to Huaying Peak often, and there is no point of view. Those who fish for 3 days and hang nets for 2 days, as long as no one urges them, they will resolutely not go. Zhong Qian wanted to make that Gontang worshipper work harder, so she urged the old man to settle down at Huaying Peak, so as not to have to jump back and forth between Yushan Mountain and sword-worshipping platform. The old deaf child laughed and said nothing. I am called Lao Deaf, I am not an old fool. In addition to Fuyao, Chen Pingon set up a cloud nest formation in Jumping Fish Mountain. Before that, it was obvious that Qin Shanju didn't want Mili to have too much interaction with this group of outsiders, who strictly belonged to the unnamed disciples of Luopa Mountain. But it may be a temporary change of mind. Qin Shanju suddenly figured out something, so Zhou Hufa's great cause of patrolling mountains is flourishing. The mountain guards of Luopa Mountain seem to have Fiolu and Taiyo Yushin, these two silent and dumb capable generals. The little girl in black was wandering alone on the mountain patrol road, with no one around, a green bamboo stick threatening, and a small pole swishing. She secretly put on the cloak that the old cook tailored for her and was just the right size, and followed the instructions of Good Man Mountain. The method taught by the Lord is to stand still first, hold the corner of the cloak with 2 fingers, and then shake it vigorously, swaggeringly. Oh, 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 so majestic. Between Yingyu Peak and Huaying Peak in Tiaoyu Mountain, there is a snow-white waterfall pouring down more than 100 feet, and there is a stone bridge shaped like a rainbow. The millet grains wearing cloaks and satchels have to stop here every time, and occasionally meet with them. A colleague from Qilong Lane about this place, across a bridge, the 2 sides stood facing each other. The left guardian of Qilong Lane was lying on the other side early, and the little girl in black looked solemn and nodded. When you meet on a narrow road, the brave wins, one runs wildly, the other leaps forward, there is no loser, everyone wins. Both feet landed on the ground, and one stood still. The little girl in black turned around and clasped her fists. In fact, it was Gu Kan, who was an outsider from Luobashan, who persuaded Qin Pingon to change his mind. Gu Kan said that you want to protect Zhou Mili too much, do you really need to be so cautious? Before Zhou Mili met you in that dumb lake, did she have a guardian? If you are so cautious in your home's desolate mountain world, don't you underestimate your own mountain guards? Today, the little girl in black is still wearing a cloak, with her arms folded around her chest, holding a green bamboo stick and a golden pole, standing in the middle of the stone bridge. She looks up at the waterfall. He looked serious and frowned. It turned out that Sister Siago suggested that she show her real body yesterday, stay in the pool, drink water with her mouth wide open, to be precise, catch the waterfall and see if she can drink enough water. So Xiao Mili seriously considered whether this proposal is feasible or not, and if someone accidentally saw it, it would be embarrassing or not. A warm palm was pressed on the head, and Xiao Mili tilted his head. Hey, hey, it turned out to be the good mountain master. Chen Pingon told her the idea and reason why he set up the cloud nest. Xiao Mili scratched his face. What did I think, what a big deal. Walking along the mountain road leisurely together, Chen Pingon borrowed the green bamboo stick, and the little girl in black carried the golden pole on her shoulder. The trekking stick poked down on the bluestone slab, making an aggressive sound. Millet raised her palm and placed a pile of melon seeds. While nibbling melon seeds, Chen Pingon complained, "It's not easy to practice Taoism, and I'm busy with general affairs. I owe a lot of debts of favor and study. Far and near, there are so many things big and small. The old cook has a backlog of all kinds of letters on the desk. I worry about whether I can reply to the letter or how to write the reply letter." It was the first time for the nagging and disgruntled Qin Shanju to tell others what was in his heart. One big and one small, working together, finished nibbling the melon seeds, and the little ones clenched their fists and handed them to Qin Pingon. Qin Pingon didn't know what to do, but he still spread his palms and asked with a smile, "What?" Xiao Mili grinned and said, "I have saved a lot of fun, and I will borrow some from the good Shanju." One loosens his fist and the other clenches it. Chen Pingan shook his fist, indicating that he had received it, and asked with a smile, "Isn't it a gift?" Xiaomi merely nodded vigorously, "I only borrow it, not give it away." Chen Pingan smiled and narrowed his eyes, "Doesn't it still count as interest?" Meili shook her head, laughed and said, "It must." Chen Ping suddenly said, "Good deal." When they came on the road, under the sunlight, a rainbow hung over the waterfall. As the most important Yulin crossing, some colleagues joked that even if a dog pooped on the side of the Yulin crossing, whoever stepped on it would have to report it to the court for record. Lu Yen smiled and said, "Why didn't you recognize your identity?" Chen Pingan said helplessly, "I heard from Dongshan that the Yunyan Kingdom's court may have wanted to express their gratitude. Even the records of all the genealogy monks of the Qingpingjian sect, Yugui sect, etc. only left text and no pictures." Lu Yen joked, "It's not the ordinary accumulation of prestige." Chen Pingan didn't explain anything. In the past, any immortal mansion with the sect's head in Tongya continent was a well-deserved god, and the joy, anger, sorrow, and joy of the immortal master were as clear as rain and snow. The mountains and rivers are beautiful, like a beautiful mute woman with tender feelings. The human body is floating like dust on the road, and the world is just like the ripples of water. Lu Yen continued the previous topic and said, "I will try not to delay Shanju Chen's practice time too much." Chen Pingan said, "Protecting the Tao is not cultivating the Tao." When a Taoist comes out of the mountain, in addition to gaining experience in the world of mortals and sharpening his Taoist heart, he also does nothing more than seek out immortal fate, collect heavenly materials and earthly treasures, accumulate merit, and increase his Taoist power. There are also 3 external affairs, although they are done occasionally, they are of great importance. For example, the first one is to guard the gate for others, such as Yao Qing, the national master of the Qingshan dynasty, guarding the gate for the ghost Su Jun. The next step is to save people and lead them up the mountain. To put it more bluntly, it means going out to find Taoist embryos, accepting them as disciples, strengthening the sect, and continuing the Taoist lineage. Then it's about helping people protect the road. For example, in the Ohua Blessed Land, Jiang Shangzhen transformed into Zhou Fei of Spring Chao Palace in order to help Lu Fang, a bird's-eye view peak, to break through a love barrier. Jiang Shangzhen spent a lot of time on this, but the problem was that Lu Fang, a sword cultivator, was never able to break through it. The inner demon is probably still fighting against the wall in a land of lotus flowers. According to what Chief Shou said afterwards, if Lu Fang had been willing to enter the Jade Gui sect in his early years, there would be no need to go to the Ohua Blessed Land. The strong melon is not sweet, but to quench his thirst, it's a pity that Lu Fang's elm not just didn't wake up and he had to hang himself from a tree. Previously at the Fuyola private dojo, the old temple master had 2 comments about Sun Yuan, who was half a neighbor, one derogatory and the other praising. One line is that he disliked Sun Yuan for not being broad-minded enough and was one of the main culprits that led to the collapse of Yizhou. What's the point of cultivating Taoism? It's just a private plan. The shortcomings of Tonggishao are shared by Sun and Du. Another compliment, the evaluation is not low, disciples like Jing Juzhong and Sun Yuan, the more the better. Lu Yen stroked his beard and smiled and said, "If Master Chen is so polite, then I will really have no contact with Master Chen." Chen Pingan nodded and said, "No need to see anyone outside." The reason why Lu Yen asked Chen Pingan to be his Taoist protector was of course not because Lu Yen could only find Chen Pingan. He traveled the world alone. Yun Shui had lived for 3,000 years, but Lu Yen still had several Taoist friends. Just like Master Huolong who came to Tonggishao with him this time, he is a good friend who has been in love for many years. However, as Master Huolong himself said, guarding the gates is worry-free and labor-saving. Pindao is still in a good state now, so he will do his duty and never give up. Don't shirk, but when it comes to the hard work of protecting the Tao, we have to change it. The poor Taoist's ability to be patient is really not that good. Someone on the mountain once made an analogy: helping people guard the gates is a short-term job, while protecting people's roads is a long-term job. Chen Pingan said, I hope the result will be a battle to protect the Tao. The younger generation will not have any merit, but will have a small amount of hard work. Lu Yen smiled knowingly. As expected, it couldn't be better. The implication beyond the language is very good. The easier it is for Chen Pingan to protect the Tao, the less he has to personally participate in the situation, and the less effort he has to do. It naturally means that Lu Yan's practice will be smoother. Lu Yan suggested, Shan Master Qin might as well just use one clone to enter that blessed place. It's probably enough. Chen Pingan didn't dare to make a conclusion on how to enter there. He said, I know very little about that place. Do the seniors have detailed files similar to Jishu? It's better for the juniors to do their homework early. Lu Yan shook his head and said, I only have some hearsay information, so I can't give much inside information. I only know that because it is a first-class cave and a middle-class blessed land, there has always been a saying that it is top-heavy. The access control is extremely strict and there are many passes. Pindao was able to go there to experience, and it was only through the mediation of the Holy Master that he was able to open up the net. The Holy Master also made it clear to Pindao that making exceptions would come with a price, but what is the price? The Holy Master not clear. He said that he just wanted Pindao to think carefully before making a decision. Chen Pingan secretly waited in his heart, a middle-grade blessed land. Does it mean that the number of qi refiners is not too large, and the level is limited? During the study tour, Li Baoping discussed similar issues with Cui Dongshan. At that time, the boy in white smiled playfully and asked the little girl in red cotton-padded jacket a question: Have you ever bought hot tofu from the roadside stall in that market? It turns out that in the eyes of mathematicians who are proficient in mathematics, the total amount of the aura of heaven and earth and the destiny of a dynasty is one of a certain quota, whether it is as large as the vast world or as small as any blessed land. Therefore, every martial artist becomes a martial arts master, and a monk achieves the realm of immortality by cutting tofu on a chopping board. First come, first served. The weight of the tofu cubes is the level of achievement. Li Baoping's next question caught the carefree Cui Dongshan a little off guard. Do you have to pay to cut off a piece of tofu? The price for buying tofu is determined by everyone and the stall owner. Is there any discount? Chen Pingan asked a key question. Senior, do you know who has the final say in that cave? Lu Yan hesitated for a moment and said, the founders of the three religions only established some rules at first and did not interfere in specific affairs. I heard that there are only a few people who are actually in charge, each with his own name. The battle to the sky changed the world, and some of them from ancient times, the gods, such as Ant Feng, were able to retain their status as gods. Later mountain monks only knew that the passages for these gods to and from the human world were mostly on the top of the mountain where the ancestral palaces of military strategists from various continents were. But where they live, or rather are imprisoned, has always been subject to some speculation. After all, it is impossible for the founders of the three religions to let these gods scatter in the sky, otherwise Zhou will go to the sky to attract the gods to their places, causing all the avenues to gradually collapse, and human beings will be destroyed. The time has long been in chaos, not to mention the smooth weather. I am afraid that even the bright and different roads and the changing of the seasons have become a luxury. The founders of the three religions, let alone blocking the door with their Taoist bodies, should be forced to disperse and mend the vacancies in those avenues. As for this group of ancient gods, as well as the new batch of gods who were born along with the four worlds, their golden bodies were fixed on the cloud where the cave, heaven and blessed land were connected. That's why Lu Yen said, there are strict rules over there. Chen Pingan changed the topic and asked, Senior, you have traveled around the world of Qingming. What is your biggest impression? This is quite impressive. This Taoist friend from Chunyang likes to travel to famous mountains and rivers the most. The things he gives are in contrast to each other in the 5 elements. It may be a little too much to say that it is a help in times of need, but it is the icing on the cake. Gifts are an understatement. Return to the mountain dojo and refine it carefully. I believe it will be of great benefit and help you to reach a higher level in the immortal realm. It is not difficult at all. This is what an expert will do. Then you will know if there is. Master Hulong hesitated for a moment, but still didn't point out something. In fact, the reward Chen Pingan should really ask for is to have a good discussion with Master Chunyang and ask for some Taoist mental methods that are traditional secrets from the family. Meeting I met Taoist Chunyang, but if you don't discuss Taoism and talk about the golden elixir, what's the difference between entering Baoshan and returning empty-handed? To put it bluntly, this guy is so thin-skinned that he is so scrupulous about this and other taboos when doing business with others. Chen Pingan and Lu Yen returned to the wine table. Xiago had just told Cui Dongshan about the Taoist embryo and let Cui sect leader decide whether to take her up the mountain. Unexpectedly, Cui Dongshan revealed the family background, Taoist name, sect, and other family treasures of the female cultivator and fellow Taoists. Xiago was puzzled and asked him if he had already taken a fancy to the woman's basic qualifications. Cui Dongshan laughed loudly and said that he did not have the ability to predict the future or open his eyes, but he was still well informed. The dozen or so people in his group arrived in the capital earlier than you and your husband. They had nothing to do and often walked around. People from various government offices looked through the official documents of the Ministry of Justice, glanced at them a few times and remembered them. I was not paying attention at first and almost missed this big omission. Xietzishi, don't worry, since it is a talent recommended by Xietzishi personally, he and Qingping Sword Sect will definitely focus on cultivating him. Cui Dongshan curiously asked about Xiago. Didn't he think about the day he would found a mountain sect? Xiago was not interested. He said that he had direct disciples and a large group of disciples and disciples. They found the Kaishan dojo, established a sect, and became the first sect. So what if there is a next sect? Practice should not be done by oneself, but let others do it for you. What? Cui Dongshan's little chicken pecked at the rice, nodded his head, and kept saying that everyone has his own ambitions, all are good, all are good. The arrival of Master Hulong was like giving Feng Shuetao a big bowl of hangover soup. Although Feng Shuetao was nervous, he was still tough and did not say a soft word. After all, he is a time-honored person who has risen to prominence, and Aai Aizhou has a bad relationship with Beiju Luzhou. It is not appropriate to show any flattery to Master Hulong, both emotionally and rationally. Besides, as a wild cultivator, he still has some ability to manipulate people's hearts. Sure enough, the old master didn't take it seriously. Instead, he glanced at Feng Shuetao and sat down with a smile. He drank a bowl of wine and wiped his mouth. The old master said with a kind face, "Friend Qingmi, I am a poor Taoist. I drank the fine wine, but the word bei seems to have to stay. Although Yuai Aizhou, Lu Kaishan and Wei Tiankai do have 2 new ones who have been promoted to the 14th realm, you are good at everything, and you are more capable of making money. It's number 1 in Zhuzhou, but it's not that good at all. Fighting is not an option." Feng Shuetao didn't dare to make irresponsible remarks when it came to fighting. Ai Aizhou Qingmi was never among the handful of powerful people promoted by Haoran. Especially after he personally walked through the wild world, Feng Zuido's mood became even lower. Cui Dongshan said from the bottom of his heart, Brother Feng, please ask me quickly. We are also in the 14th realm. Can seniors really be able to beat 2 with 1? Feng Shuetao turned a deaf ear. I'm not a fool. Do you dare to ask such a question and only want to fight? Xiago didn't have any worries and asked directly, now that we are united, what does the world look like in your eyes? Master Huolong twisted his beard and pondered for a moment, then said slowly, I can't say much about the mystery here. I can only say one thing. In the eyes of a poor Taoist, the heaven and the earth are a stove, and as for you, you are just firewood. Xiago asked, the invisible spiritual energy flowing between heaven and earth is the spark that can be used anytime and anywhere? Master Huolong was non-committal and said with a smile, it is quite a strange thing that my fellow Taoist has not reached the 14th level. To be worshipped as a second-rate person is to be humbled by my talents. Xiago followed the pole and asked, is Piety Peak short of a chief? Master Huolong is recognized as the kind of master of chatting without landing on the subject. He can pick up any conversation and warm up any awkward situation. If Master Chen doesn't mind poaching, why not be the chief minister in name only? Xiago grinned and said, forget it, one girl will not marry 2 men. Master Huolong immediately said from his heart, as long as fellow Taoist Bai Jing becomes the chief worshipper of Piety Peak, he can go to Ai continent with Pin Dao in an honorable way. After a while, Lu Kaishan and Wei Tiankai, 2 against 2, couldn't be fairer. Moreover, the teacher has a good reputation, so as long as he doesn't get angry, it's hard for the Confucian temple to say anything. Hearing this, Xiago's eyes lit up, let me take the lead, let me try first and see if I can fight 2 against each other. If the opportunity is not good, will you help me? Now how much these new 14ers weigh, Xiago is extremely curious. Master Huolong put down his wine bowl, wiped his mouth, and said with a smile, there are some things that just make you happy when you think about them. Once you're happy, that's all. Perhaps he felt that it was rare that there were no ordinary people at the wine table tonight. He eloquently recounted his practice experience, whether it's a matter of course, or it's pure luck, as long as a monk successfully reaches the 14th realm, he has found a road that is infinitely close to immortality. Then just take your time. Pure martial arts, but also there is a saying that boxing is afraid of young people. But Taoists, approaching the top of the mountain, still have to say that the older you are, the higher the Taoism. New 10 the 4th becomes the 4th, and when the hard-working daughter-in-law becomes a mother-in-law, she will naturally have the right to look down on the next group of new 14ths. Many people in the Ascension realm who have become old and decayed in form and spirit often mistakenly think that cultivating the Tao is just that. Poor Taoists also experienced such a bleak period when their Taoist minds retreated. Who can reach the Ascension realm? As a proud man, at the beginning of his enlightenment and ascension, who doesn't have the heart to be brave and diligent? Unfortunately, as time goes by, his practice is hindered, and he will inevitably become slack, and then he thinks that the path is hopeless, and he is completely discouraged. However, there are a total of 15 realms of knowledge and cultivation, which are like 3 books, upper, middle and lower. When you break through the nascent soul realm and enter the upper 5 realms, you think you are in the 3rd part of this book. When you reach the immortal realm, you will be shocked to find that you are in the 2nd part. Hearing this, Feng Shuetao continued, what's even more terrifying is that I have entered the Ascension realm. I am afraid that I am in the 1st book. Lu Yen smiled and said, by analogy, after the union, you will be afraid that your monastic career will be just a preface, right? Master Huolong laughed heartily and just raised the wine bowl, everything is worse than having the cup in your hand, and there are no worries outside the cup. Xiago echoed, sleep until you wake up naturally, and sleep until the food in the world is ready. Cui Dongshan praised, what a beautiful poem. It has no rhythm, but it has charm. Only Pei Qian did not squint, looked at his nose and heart, and drank silently. The rest of the people subconsciously looked towards Qin Shanju, who was rumored to be extremely talented and famous for his poetry. Taking advantage of both Taoish Chunyang and Master Huolong being present, Feng Shuatao also felt that the atmosphere at the wine table was good, and the drunkenness was daring. Following the previous topic, he asked a more tacky question: the Ascension Realm will definitely not be able to beat the 14th Realm. As far as he knew, Liang had 2 sparring sessions with Jin Invincible Yudo in Tianwai Tian of Qingming World. This is a battle between the Ascension Realm Sword Cultivator and the 14th Realm. The only spectators of the battle are demons from outside. Overseas in Nanbosu Island, Chen Chunan intercepted the wild Lu Cha. This was a life-and-death fight between a perfect and pure Confucian in the Ascension Realm, carrying the sun and moon on his shoulders, and a newly promoted sword cultivator in the 14th Realm. On the battlefield of the old Dragon City in Aquarius Continent, the true Dragon King Zhu had a close fight with Fei Fei and Zhu Yan, who were on the throne of the wilderness. In the realm of Tuiyue Mountain, the young hermit official and the culprit, the chief disciple of the savage ancestor, belonged to the struggle between 2 people from the 14th Realm. It's just that neither of them are pure swordsmen in the true sense. Some results are reasonable. Some wins and losses are unexpected. Master Huolong laughed and said, "What does it mean to win? Is it a tie at a lower level, or a defeat, or a beheading?" Fellow Qingmi Taoists' wording must be more accurate, otherwise it will be difficult to make it clear. Feng Shuatao asked doubtfully, "Is it possible that a person in the Ascended Realm still has a chance to kill the 14th Realm?" Master Fire Dragon twisted his beard and pondered for a moment. "Before this year, there is no chance of winning. A difference of 1 realm is a world of difference. After this year, there is no telling. I talked about this with my friends before and reached a consensus. When faced with the 14th Realm in the Ascension Realm, the former will win if he can escape without harming the Tao." Master Huolong was silent for a moment and said, "For example, Taoish Chunyang fellow, while walking on the road, I got into a dispute with a certain new 14er from a certain world. The reasoning didn't make sense, so I had to fight. Fellow Taoish Chunyang got into a real fight with him, and there was a lot of trouble. Small odds." Lu Yan laughed dumbly and shook his head slowly. This assumption cannot be taken seriously. Xiago smiled from ear to ear. Suppose Bai is also a pure sword cultivator. If the old blind man had refined 1 or 2 natal characters at the beginning, and if Shou Mi had secretly eaten 2 or 3 of the 14th realms, and if most of the 13th and 14th realm demons in the wild world had died, if the little master is not bound by rules. The sword heart is pure. As a sword cultivator, he has an innate advantage and has huge killing power, but the pass is more difficult to break. The scene after the rain this time is proof. There are several as a sword cultivator. Has he reached a higher level? Further back, there are those in the Ascension realms such as Wild Peach Pavilion who are good at fighting. There are more of them. As for further back, there is nothing to talk about. These 4 kinds of cultivators are the powerful ones on the top of the mountain. Ascension, facing the 14th realm, the first 2 levels are enough to protect oneself, and the latter 2 are still capable of fighting, but the specific outcome, whether it is victory or defeat, or life and death, depends to a large extent. It is in the hands of the 14th realm. It depends on whether the 14th realm is willing to risk its life, whether the 14th realm is willing to die, and whether it is willing to trade the real life of the Tao for the other party's loss of Tao. During this period, there were a few special cases that were enough to make the 14th realm feel troublesome, such as one of Lu Ji's natal flying swords. The 14 realms that should be in an invincible position must carefully weigh the cost. Pei Qian was surprised because she did not expect that Master Huolong would place Mr. Xiago and Mr. Xiaoma after Zhao Tianshi and the others. The old master stroked his beard and smiled. as for the 14th realm, I have just entered the industry. I am young and it is not easy to talk nonsense. Why did Wu Shuangjiang work so hard and plan for a long time just to refine 4 imitation fairy swords before he was willing to start the troubled times and take the lead in rising up? It was Wu Shuangjiang who felt that his killing power in the 14th realm was lacking. Jing Juzhong had a heated discussion with Yu Dou, who was visiting Baidi City. Jing Juzhong is in the 14th realm with 1 person and 3 people, and Yu Dou is not in by Yujing, but Jing Juzhong still loses. Master Hulong suddenly stood up and winked. Chen Pingan stood up silently and followed him. The old man walked up to the top of the ferry, held it up with both hands, and asked with a smile, "Master Qin, how do you feel now after we parted ways on the island?" On the way to the mountain, the wind blows from all directions. From nascent soul to jade pu, you need to pass the heart barrier and meet the inner demons. The key is to have a clear mind. From ascension to joining the Tao, the key lies in one's skill and whether it can fit in with the Tao of heaven and earth. When you reach the top of the mountain, you are in a league of your own. At the wine table, Pei Qian asked quietly, "Senior brother, Master seems a little nervous after seeing the old man." Cui Dongshan pretended to be stupid and said, "Is it an illusion?" The old man helped give an explanation, thousands of threads, mixed feelings, and mixed flavors. Chen Pingan said honestly, "I can't tell clearly for a while." The old man looked up at the sky and said with a smile, "If you want to return the world to the world, you have to be alone. Don't be in a hurry, think about it slowly." Chen Pingan was lying on the railing, lost in thought. With the bright moon in the sky, the old man pointed to the sky and said something that seemed like nonsense. If I remember correctly, there were 4 gates in the ancient heaven. Chen Pingan seemed to have come to his senses and gave a concise explanation, "Come out of the mountain." The old man hummed and nodded slightly, "It's interesting. The heart and moon are full tonight." When I came here, I often wandered at the foot of the mountain. I saw the Taoist priests again, and I was depressed. Live or die to clear up the confusion, I will. Master Hulong waited patiently for the next sentence. Xia Go rubbed his red cheeks and held it in for a long time before giving an explanation, "I want to cry." When Master Hulong heard this, he suddenly laughed heartily, expressed his deep agreement, and even said a few good words. Xia Go had a melancholy look on his face. "Mr. Zhu is a critical friend. He criticized me very rudely, saying that I was born at the right time and have gone through many hardships to practice Taoism. I am lucky and always have near misses. I seem to be taking my time. I am slowly accumulating Tao power, but I don't know my true intention. When my realm is high, I retreat from the Taoist mind. Therefore, I only realize small fruits, which is still far from being mature. So I went out to relax and take a trip." Shiwandashan, the old blind man's opinion of me is different from Mr. Zhu's. "Not much." Master Hulong laughed dumbly, "Mr. Zhu. Zhu Lian, a martial artist from Lotus Flower Blessed Land. It is true that he is a rare and wonderful person, but on Xia Go's side, Zhu Lian will never age, no matter what, right?" Xia Go glanced at the old man and said, "In my eyes, you are also very old." Master Hulong stroked his beard and smiled. He said this in a very down-to-earth manner, which made people feel happy after listening to it. Xia Go regards Feng Shuetao, whose Taoist name is Qingmi, as a junior among the juniors. Even Lu Yan, whose Taoist name is Chunyang, is at most a peer on the path of cultivation, and they can just call each other Taoist friends. However, the old cook in his poor family and the old man next to him do have a strange ability that makes people think that they are the kind of elders they think of. What they say is teaching, and they are telling you a few words of wisdom from people who have experienced it. In this matter, even Shanju Qin, who likes to be reasonable, seems to be a bit unreasonable. Master Huolong smiled and said, "The Sunset Landing was once the private domain of fellow Taoist, causing the Golden Crow to sleep soundly for thousands of years. It happened to be in Aquarius continent. Fellow Taoist is so reasonable and willing to give in, which is quite unexpected. If the rumors on the mountain are correct, it seems that Bai Jing leased this dojo to the Dali imperial court." Xia Go curled his lips. "First of all, the powerful dragon will not overwhelm the local snake, and besides, our mountain master is about to become the grand master of the Greatly Kingdom. Why don't one family speak the same language as the other?" But she quickly added, "If I fall into the wild world, it depends on whether I can speak well or not. No one can be the lobbyist, not even Mr. Bai." Master Huolong nodded and said, "Principal Taoists like to hear honest words from honest people." Even Jiang Shangjin was very curious about Xia Go's Taoist roots, and privately asked Chen Pingan whether it was possible that Miss Xia was from the Shinto. This kind of speculation is easy to understand. After all, Bai Jing's dojo is well known on the top of the mountain. During the high-ranking day, she once carved and opened up a fire palace as a shelter. However, according to the inside story leaked by Qing Tong, Bai Jing's origin is indeed a demon clan on the earth, not a member of the ancient heaven. Because of Xiao Mo's relationship, Xia Go and Chen Pingan chatted about the past in a more casual manner. She did not deny that she initially wanted to take the better-born son as her own, and then tried to learn from the ancient world. One of the 10 richest people, Lan Qi, a female cultivator, refined this great son into her natal object. However, she soon discovered that the great son actually gave birth to spiritual wisdom, and the avenue manifested into a golden crow. Bai Jing changed his original intention and protected the path for her. So when Xiago proposed to go to Howran World, Bai Zhe didn't stop him even though he knew that Man Huang would lose some of his top combat power. This was a very important reason. It's not just as simple as Xiago going to find Xiao Mo. According to the rules of the wilderness, when it comes to the Taoists' great opportunity, all calculations of interests must make way for it. What's more, Bai Jing is also a candidate sword cultivator in the 14th realm who Bai Zhe has high hopes for. Master Huolong smiled and said, "Really speaking, Pin Dao, fellow Taoist Bai Jing, and Master Chunyang are somewhat related to each other in the lineage of Taoism. It is very appropriate to say, fellow Taoist." Xia Go nodded vigorously. "In the future, the three of us will often visit each other. If we encounter a hard nail that our hands, we will say hello to each other and keep a cloud-piercing arrow to meet us with thousands of troops, ha." Master Huolong touched his palm and said with a smile, "It's easy to talk." In the vast void outside the sky, there are countless big suns floating in the sky, and each big sun is like a ferry, leading to the palace that was praised as the Imperial Palace by later Taoists. 1 Danshao Jiangke Huiyang Palace. Lu Yen, a real person from Chunyang, was the most famous person in history. He had taught fire techniques many times in this ancient ruins. Most of the people here who listened to the teachings humbly were noble ancient dragons. Master Huolong asked suddenly, "It seems that fellow Taoist Bai Jing is very interested in Pei Qian." Xia Go smiled awkwardly. "Creating gangs in the mountains is just like children playing house, just for fun." Under the instigation of the white-haired boy, they all recognized Guizhuzhou as the leader of the alliance, and established their own mountain with Pei Qian and his gang. Master Huolong smiled, "Oh." Xia Gugan smiled and said, "Master Huolong changed the subject. I wonder who was the first to use sweetness to describe a sweet dream. It's amazing." Xia Go understood. She had been sleeping for thousands of years, and Huolong Zhenren had always moved the world with his sleep. In this complicated world, meeting a few people with simple ideas is like meeting a good drinker and fine wine. Xiago grinned and said, "Old master, if we met on the road 10,000 years ago, we would definitely become good friends." Master Huolong twisted his beard and said, "Same feeling." Xiago said, "What is the old man going to do next?" Master Huolong smiled and said, "Return to the wilderness, find a few people who can really fight, and learn the Taoism from each other." Because Chen Pingon and Xiago did not deliberately hide their tracks when they boarded the ship, the ears and eyes installed by Yunyan State on Yolindu did not dare to take it lightly and immediately informed the court. No matter how small the territory of Yunyan country is, there are still a handful of local qi practitioners. In the corridor on the top floor of a private house on the shore of the ferry, there is a group of boys and girls looking at the Tongyin ferry in the distance. They have nothing to do on weekdays. They just stare at the movements of the entire Yolindu. They are not afraid of having nothing to do, but they are afraid that the foreign immortal master will have a dispute with the local family. I heard that the Minister of Rites is on tenterhooks every day, going to the temple to burn fragrant. Fortunately, so far, there has not been any uncontrollable mess in the Jiangyi area. The emperor and a large group of royal relatives are increasingly looking forward to having someone come here as a guest and meet him. But it's fun to say that first, His Majesty the Emperor of Yunyan Kingdom, when a golden elixir comes to the capital, he will personally host a banquet to entertain him, and then Yuanin will do it. The golden elixir is not enough, and then it becomes the upper five. Jade Pu, who was in the same realm, is now more even when he heard that there was an immortal coming. His Majesty the Emperor seemed not to be interested. After all, he had even met the Ascension realm named Xingmi. There was a young man with thick eyebrows and big eyes sitting cross-legged, sword across his knees, frowning and asking, "Is it him?" Next to her was a slender girl with cold eyebrows. She looked up at the ferry and reassured, "It's hard to say." They had received a confidential message from the Ministry of Justice of the Imperial Court before. The head of the Qingping Sword sect came to Tonggishao in person, and Mi Dajiangxian soon arrived. He made a great contribution and found those few remnants of the wild monster clan who killed innocent people indiscriminately, and the turmoil of Dadu was the excavation can finally proceed smoothly. Without this key clue, none of them would have connected the man in blue shirt next to the girl in the mink hat with the legendary young hidden official. The young man is the only local sword cultivator in Yunyan country, and it is inevitable that he is a little complacent in his spiritual state of mind. Now that his horizons have opened up, he feels that the pressure has increased sharply, and he has become taciturn on weekdays. The streets of the capital were full of strange people and strangers who once thought that the earthly immortal they pursued their whole life was nothing. This made the young swordsman seem to be practicing silent meditation recently. If Tonggishao was still the same Tonggishao a few decades ago, with his Taoist qualifications and sword cultivator status, if nothing else happened, he should have gone to a certain sect to further his studies. The young man was in a gloomy mood and said in a low voice, "Those who are accomplished monks, passing by our Yunyan country, will it be like passing by an ant nest for people like them?" In the past, Tonggishao had little information, and the qi refiners often had their eyes high above their heads and were not interested in the outside world at all. Now that things have changed, they can no longer help but to keep their doors closed and feel arrogant. The girl was stunned when she heard this, and turned her gaze away from the Yulin ferry, and said softly, "Zhong Chui, whether it is those sects from other places, or the land gods who travel here under aliases, in the face of these unattainable behemoths, we just give it a wide berth." The young man named Zhong Chui murmured, "It's easy to ask the gods but hard to send them away." Because he didn't quite believe that the Qingping Sword sect was a mountain sect that opened a charity hole. Are there really such people in the world who care so much about the quality of the world outside themselves? I am afraid that one day, the Qingping Sword sect will gain a firm foothold in Tongya continent, and all the countries along the coast of Dadu will become puppets of that fairy palace. A martial artist climbed over the wall to the top floor and bought a jar of barley wine from a time-honored shop. He climbed over the railing. The middle-aged martial artist's face was somewhat similar to that of the young man in the corridor. The girl covered her mouth and smiled sweetly. "Uncle Jean, you drove away another illegal cruise ship." "I saw it. He was very heroic." The man laughed and said, "Girl Kai, not only that, I also met two strangers on Tanjian's boat and made an appointment to drink." A tall young man who was taking a nap against the wall quickly asked, "It's not the man in the green shirt, is it? Did he tell you his identity? Is his surname Chin?" The man boasted and didn't make any drafts. He said seriously, "We just want to have a drink together. We don't need to know our names." Over on the roof, a young man in white was lying with his legs crossed. Feng Shuetao was speechless. He came here to drink the northwest wind and listen to a few children complaining. What was the meaning of it? The young man said regretfully, "It's a pity. If it were really that person and we got involved again, Uncle Jean, you would be rich." The man said with a smile, "Young people should not always think that they will be successful if they meet a noble person." After slapping the young man on the forehead, the man joked, "You brat, do you know that in the eyes of those rich and powerful nobles, you guys have prices stuck on your foreheads?" On the other side of the roof, Feng Shuetao smiled and said, "That's a bit too much to say." Cui Dongshan, who rested his head on the back of his hand, swayed his legs and said, "He is a well-informed and reasonable person." Feng Shuetao asked, "Who does Cui Zongzhu have in mind to win over?" The Qingping sword sect is different from the Luopa mountain. The latter announced that it would be closed for 20 years and clearly did not want to increase its momentum. On the other hand, Cui Dongshan of the Xia sect has been recruiting troops. Cui Dongshan smiled and said, "Brother Feng, don't always think of me as snobbish. I just enjoy the moon with like-minded friends." Cui Dongshan explained, "I am just a transitional sect master. I only need to be responsible for laying a good foundation and building a good relationship. It's a good framework, but some gaps are deliberately left, so you don't have to worry about making up the numbers. Qingping sword sect will definitely hand it over to junior brother Chao in the future. At hand, when Chao Qinglang takes over, he will have something to do, at least he won't have to tie his hands and follow suit." Feng Shuetao nodded, "If Qingping sword sect is too CUAS style, Chao Qinglang will be in trouble." Cui Dongshan hummed, "That's a bit harsh to say." Feng Shuetao was helpless. On the other side of the corridor, although they felt that what the man said was reasonable, they were always unconvinced. Yesterday, today, and tomorrow, the moon waxes and wanes, and the young people are young. There is no night ban in the capital. Young people with money and energy in their pockets, as well as spiritual practitioners who are full of energy, are often night owls. Many shops temporarily hire assistants to take care of the shop for the sake of business, which means they can earn $2 a day, so why not do it? A pair of Taoist monks who became a couple halfway through also came to the capital of Yunyan Kingdom. The man had a face as white as a sheet of paper and a fierce appearance. He was accompanied by a fair-skinned woman with an exquisite figure. They were just hanging out and gaining insights. It's hard to say whether you can travel all over the world if you have reason, but you can indeed travel all over the world if you have money. They had received a large amount of windfall, and their original intention of living under someone else's roof had faded away, so they did not go to the mountain god's mansion to seek a living. They were Fan Tong and Xie Sanyang. Along the way, they also heard about several major events far away. For example, a certain great swordsman surnamed Mi from the Sword Chi Great Wall took action and uncovered those who were making trouble and smashing talismans. Monster beasts. Another example is Yugue Zong Duo has a heaven-reaching figure to worship, named Xingmi, an old in the Ascension realm. Naturally, Fan Tong and Xia Sanyang didn't know that the culprits who almost stopped the Dado excavation work were the group of young men and women they met in the dilapidated temple. As for the swordsman named Mi and who he was, Fan Tong asked. It was probably because others saw that he did not seem to be a kind person, so they ignored him at all. Fan Tong really wanted to find an Xianjia inn or shop on Yolindu, and asked the immortal master if he recognized a person named Chen Pingan, or buy a few shandy newspapers to see if there was any chance. Really found that name. In the end, the woman gave up the idea by saying, "You have money?" Fan Tong actually did have private money, but he didn't need to reveal it out of curiosity. They stayed in an ordinary inn in the capital. When I was walking on the shore of the ferry earlier, I saw a moored ferry. It was the largest ferry. There were always some young and beautiful fairies pointing at it. The crowd of Ying, Yen Yen, and all the fairies with genealogies were gathered together. Fan Tong, a hot-blooded old man, of course failed to keep his eyes open, so he was pinched and pinched again and again by the angry woman. The pain makes the man sweat, the pain returns it hurts, and taking care of it are two different things. Fan Tong believed that Master Qin would be in a similar situation if he traveled with them. I just don't know if Master Qin Xian, who claims to be the Sword Immortal, would be frightened if he met me, the Sword Immortal, who is being talked about a lot now, and had the chance to have a few words face to face. Tonight, the couple went out of the city again and came to Yolindu to eat out in a restaurant. This kind of expense was numerous, and they had saved a few snow coins before. In the past, women liked to visit all kinds of rouge and gouache shops, but here it became even more exaggerated. Fan Tong was surprised. She picked and picked but didn't buy. How could she be happy? Xia Sanyang chose a fly restaurant and planned to eat hot pot. As soon as Fan Tong sat down, the boss began to worry about whether the couple would be freeloaders, but then he thought again. The government is so tough now, isn't it? The people at the next table were people who came down from the mountain. Although they didn't use their innermost words, the content of their conversation was all about the fairy family. However, Fan Tong knew very well that the reason for this was because they were accompanied by several ordinary women with heavy makeup and jewels. When those women saw Fan Tong, who looked like a wanted criminal, they felt a little disdainful. Looking at Xia Sanyang next to the fierce man, their eyes had a meaning that only women could understand. Xia Sanyang looked proud. "I am now a decent and decent woman. What about you? You can make money by going to bed, right?" Fan Tong didn't know that there was an undercurrent surging here, and there was more interest in the slightly suspicious chat content of those genealogy monks. They were explaining some of the inside stories of the immortal family to the women, saying that the attire of the chi refiners in the mountains can be divided into 3, 6, or 9 grades. The first type is those who can tame immortal birds and beasts as mounts, either because they have good luck, or it means that he has a strong enough background and is rewarded by his master and elders. The second type is an expensive talisman boat. This kind of fairy treasure cannot be afforded casually. The third type is even more exaggerated. You can have a Liaotian is always eating the private ferry with fairy money. Xia Sanyang tapped the man next to her with her elbow and raised her eyebrows. Fan Tong laughed and said that these 3 kinds of immortal styles were beyond her reach and she had to find a good sleeping position in her dreams. All the women looked directly at a young man who drank slowly. He was the only one at the table without a female companion. The eloquent man changed the subject and said that Mr. Hong has a talisman treasure boat from the Patriarch Hall to congratulate him on entering the cave realm. The young man surnamed Hong smiled lightly, took a sip of his drink, and said that his meager Taoist skills were nothing at all. Compared with a true Taoist genius, he was far behind. The more self-effacing he is, the hotter the eyes of the women at the same table become. The man who was willing to serve as a helper for the man named Hong continued, "The most outrageous thing is, of course, that I have a private ferry. While eating hot pot, Xia Sanyang secretly rolled her eyes from time to time. Fan Tong just felt that this barley tasted soft and not strong enough. At this moment, out of the corner of her eye, the woman spotted a familiar figure on the other side of the door. She quickly stood up and saw that the man next to her was still devouring his food, so she kicked her. Fan Tong raised his head blankly, and the man suddenly smiled brightly. He was reunited with Master Chen Xian here. Chen Pingan sat on the bench opposite them with a smile. Shamelessly, let's eat and drink together. You treat me, I'll pay the bill. Chen Pingan had no choice but to sit on the floor, take out a pen and paper from his bag, and help polish the text on the spot. I'll make some slight modifications. Do you have any objections? Xiago smiled and said, just write whatever you want. The only purpose is for the mountain master to write about me and this trip as well as possible. She squatted aside and saw that the mountain master only thought about it for a moment, and then started writing quickly, starting with the phrase, I have traveled a lot. When the girl in the mink hat saw this, she nodded gently, which won my heart. The main reason is that the content is also very simple. It seems that the talents of the mountain master and I are equally matched, so there is no need to pay for editing. On the second day of the Lunar New Year, I went down the mountain with my friends, holding a bamboo hat and a bamboo hat, stepping on straw sandals, asking questions with a strong heart, misty clouds and water, and walking freely. 20 miles past the boundary of Qingping Prefecture, the boundary monuments beside the road collapsed, and the mountains and rivers of the continent collapsed. In the past 20 years, floods, droughts, locust plagues, and wars in various countries have occurred one after another. The lives of the people at the foot of the mountain are like grass, and it is difficult to say that there is peace in the mountains. More than 20 years have passed by in an instant like rocks, fire, and lightning. How dare we not cherish Taoism and accumulate Taoism power? The people's livelihood in Fuzhou City is in decline, the streets are deserted, and the people walking on the streets are many and varied. 10 miles out of the city, they stop at a small post. For 30 miles, I walked along the shore of the lake, surrounded by willows. I walked in the green shade, crossed the border ridge, and climbed the mountain along the Shinto road. The Taoist temple in the mountain was in ruins. I went inside and used the stove to light a fire. After dinner, I climbed to the top and looked out. I saw the vast lake and the vast ocean. Qingping Mansion was there. In the eyes, the wind suddenly surged and disappeared. Looking back on those days, traveling was very difficult and we often couldn't see the fireworks of the world. It was a common thing to see wolves, tigers and leopards, strange birds and beasts, and terrifying mountain spirits and water monsters. On the early morning of the third day of the lunar month, I hiked down the mountain for more than 100 miles. I stopped at Yangzhepu for a short rest and bought dry food. I spent 8 cents of my money. After crossing the Yuxian Bridge, it rained heavily and the road was muddy. After walking for 15 miles, I arrived at Dum Beach. When the rain stopped and the sky cleared, I was traveling by boat at night. The passengers in the boat liked to talk about ghosts and strange things, but they didn't know that the boatman holding the mugwort was the person transformed by Hebo. After getting off the boat and traveling by land for 80 miles, we reached the Huanghuolong mountain. There were laurel trees along the road. Unfortunately, we were not here in autumn. We met several guests returning from paying incense to the mountain. There was no main peak on the mountain here, and each one was respected. I went to the top of the mountain to meditate for a night. I saw the red sun rising into the sky and the river like a belt, which made me feel broad-minded. On the 5th day of the lunar month, I went to Liuhe town and was extorted 20 taels of silver by a local man pretending to be a soldier. 70 miles away, I saw a mountain. The mountain was majestic and undisturbed. I walked with my friends along the stream in the mountain, and there were countless fish swimming in the water. There is a careful halfway up the mountain. From then on, the only way to climb is the bird path. It is extremely steep and steep. The steps are carved into the wall and wind up. There is almost no place to stand, so you can only walk facing the wall. On the way, I saw an ancient pine tree with an old trunk like an umbrella, and a group of monkeys jumping among the branches and leaves. Above the top is a flat land with a lake in the middle and several huts beside the reed swamps. They are all people practicing Taoism. Although their expressions are dull and their bodies are withered, their eyes are bright and shining. He asked him about it and talked about the immortals, Buddhas, real people, miracles in the mountain in great detail, and decided to compile a mountain chronicle. With the help of the moonlight, looking at the scenery from the cliff, I realized that the whole body of the Dharma King was revealed in the mountains, rivers, and land. On the 7th day of the lunar month, Tianji traveled quickly and entered the mountains again. In ancient times, there was the study place of the founding emperor, and it has always been a hidden place for high spiritual beings. On the mountainside, the climate is like winter, and many beautiful and historic sites are buried in the snow, which is a pity that they cannot be seen. On the 9th day of the lunar month, I passed the battlefield site and saw a Taoist man with a high crown on a hillside, sitting on a futon with his eyes closed. There were 2 white streaks on his nose, connected with the clouds and mist. The wind was turbulent and still condensed. Not daring to disturb him, he stopped 20 steps away. The Taoist opened his eyes and spoke actively, speaking loudly again and again. The Taoist has a kind heart, and when he was leaving, he repeatedly warned us, Taoists, that when we see desires, we must stay away, like weeds, and we must avoid fire when it comes. Immortals are no different from ordinary people. Monk Yunshui wrote an inscription here, feeling ashamed that he would never see him again in this life. There are rocks standing abruptly like an old monk on the top of the mountain. There was a hut in ancient times, but now there is no grass. Only the historic well remains, and there are still green leek bushes beside it. A single peak stands out from the vast sea of clouds, the mainstay, as if the mountains are moving but the clouds are motionless. After Pei Qian finished walking, he walked out of the house. Under the clear moonlight, he saw the Xia dog still standing at the bow of the boat, minding his own business and enjoying himself secretly. Xiago looked back at the young woman and made a face at the latter. Pei Qian didn't take it seriously, just get used to it. Xiago crept up to her, raised his hand to drink, and asked with a smile, Pei Qian, let's talk while drinking. There are some things that it's time for you to know. Pei Qian seemed to be deliberately evading the important points, with a puzzled look on his face. Didn't we drink just now? Mountain Master Xiago Shua sighed, it's the second stall. Pei Qian shook his head, no need. If Xiago wanted to say anything else, Pei Qian had already turned around and walked towards his house. Xiago hesitated to speak, but in the end he did not say anything to persuade him to stay. She jumped onto the railing, swung her feet, and started talking to herself, mumbling as if she was drunk. If you get it at the right time, there will be wild dragons and snakes. If you get it at the right time, you will have great success in the world. Xiago turned to look at the back and asked, I have a question, you don't need to answer it. How have you been these past few years? Pei Qian turned his head, and it seemed that he already had the answer in his bright eyes. Needless to say, life was the best before I met Master. After I met Master, it was the best. You're tuning into the Journey of the Soul YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.